I hereby call this Planning and Community Affairs meeting to order. If we can please rise for a moment of silence. Please be seated. Mayor Rowett sends along his regrets. I will now ask if there are any disclosure or pecuniary interest in nature thereof. Okay, seeing none, we will move on. Announcements from council. Any, Councillor Watton?
Thank you, Councillor, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Madam Chair. I'd just like to announce that on the 29th of September, Car 8 Sports and Rec will be again hosting their annual fall festival. It includes a chili cook-off and car show. The cost is $5 per person, and it runs from noon till 5 p.m. on that Saturday, and would like to invite everyone and invite anyone interested to enter Chile. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Drew?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to announce the groundbreaking ceremony for the new animal shelter, Uxbridge Scugog, on 11 o'clock on the 22nd. It's been cancelled?
We'll announce that date at a further in the future.
I hadn't heard any updates. Okay, didn't get it. And the house tour for Port Perry United Church is on Saturday from 1 to 4, and actually in the morning, it's all day. And those, the results of the monies received from that go to outreach in this community, so, and in Durham region, so it's all good news. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor Drew. Councillor Watton?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also would like to just acknowledge Car 8 Sports and Rec for they held a memorial tree dedication service again in Westleton on Sunday, and we dedicated 6 more trees and many of loved ones in our beautiful park. So congratulations to Car 8 Sports and Rec for that.
Councillor Somerville?
Just a really quick but important opening on Saturday morning. And for those of you out there, mark your calendars next year for around September the 16th, because the Dentistry from the Heart at the Medical Associates, they actually do free dental care for the whole day. And there was a real line up there on Saturday morning, and they are planning to do it again next year. This is their sixth free dental clinic that they've had. I took part in this. I am so thrilled to be part of that opening. And so next year, for those of you who do not have any benefits in dental care, please remember to go and you can get your teeth cleaned, you can get fillings done, you can get extractions. There's 5 dentists, hygienists, dental assistants. It's just packed in there, but it's great to see such dentistry from the heart. So mark your calendars for next year, because they'll do it again. And we're so lucky to have this in our community. Somebody who really does care, and the dentistry there really do care. Thank you.
Councillor Back?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I just wanted to remind Council and those present that down in Whitby, at the foot of Athol Street, this Saturday, the 22nd at 10:30, the Safety Village is reopening. They did a total rehab of the little buildings. I don't know if any of you have been there, but it teaches grade 1, 2, and 3 students road safety. That is as a pedestrian, as a cyclist, and as a future auto driver. So this township, as well as all of the townships in the region of Durham, contributed money to that rebuilding of it. They were getting a little old building, so they've redesigned and rebuilt, and that opens on this Saturday at 10:30. So if any of you are interested in attending, that should be fun.
Thank you, Councillor Back, and I would also like to extend congratulations to the Terry Fox organization here in Port Perry. Sunday morning, many of us were there to cheer on their 25th anniversary of hosting it here. Elizabeth MacArthur and her team of Terry's team have raised over $1 million in this community, so that is something that we can all be very, very proud of. I would like to draw everyone's attention to the 2019 budget survey. That is up in our website, and we encourage all of the community to go on, take the survey, and have your say heard before the budget planning starts. Are there any announcements from staff? Okay, seeing none, we will now move on. Adoptions of minutes. I have it moved by Councillor Drew. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Kett. Thank you. Are there any questions? All those in favor? Carried. Okay. This portion of the meeting has been set aside for a joint statutory public information meeting held under Sections 34 and 51 of the Planning Act for applications for a zoning bylaw amendment and a plan of subdivision submitted by Scott Waterhouse of CanDevCom Limited on behalf of Chieftain Development Corporation on property located at 234 Union Avenue, Port Perry. It is important that the public express their views either in person or in writing prior to decisions being made by the councils of Township of Scugog or the Region of Durham. Please be advised that the Ontario Municipal Board was replaced by the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal, LPAT for short, on April 3rd, 2018. If you wish to file an appeal of either council's decision to the LPAT, you must first speak to the matter at this public meeting or provide a written submission before a zoning bylaw amendment is passed by Scugog or a plan of subdivision is approved by the Region of Durham. If you don't, you will not be added as party to the hearing by the LPAT unless the tribunal determines that there are reasonable grounds to do so. Public notice was served by the Township of Scugog in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act. I will now ask Jamie Robinson of MHBC Planning to present information on the applications on behalf of the Township of Scugog and the Region of Durham. Mr. Robinson, if you want to take a seat up here, and whenever you're ready, we are ready for your presentation.
There we go. Thank you, Deputy Mayor and members of council. I'll be just providing a brief overview of the application. As mentioned, this is a statutory public meeting under the Planning Act, and the main purpose of tonight's meeting is for the public to provide comments on the proposed application. Once the meeting's over, what we will do is have an opportunity to take the comments back that have been provided by the public, conduct any additional research as required, and at a subsequent meeting of council, there'll be a staff report prepared with recommendations on the zoning bylaw amendment and a comment on the subdivision application for the region. And in that meeting, we will prepare a comment summary table that details all the comments that were provided and the specific responses to each of those comments. So with that, the proposed application, so the subject lands are located west of Union and north of Josephine Street. There's other development in proximity to the site. These lands are currently vacant. And what's being proposed here again is a plan of subdivision application as well as a zoning bylaw amendment. In terms of official plan designation, the property is designated for residential development, and the official plan again is the document that provides policies for the town and gives us a snapshot into what future land uses we can expect in the future. In terms of lot area, the subject land is between 6 and 7 acres in size. It's just about 3 hectares. and has frontage of about 120 meters on Union Avenue. In terms of what's being proposed, and I'll show you a map on the next slide, but it's 28 single-family units which is being proposed, and the zoning bylaw amendment that's being proposed would implement the proposed development concept. And that zoning bylaw amendment would be it proposes zoning that would accommodate the single-family units, and then there's also a portion of open space that's proposed in the development as well, as we'll see on this map. So, on this map, you can see the layout of the proposed plan of subdivision. The park block is the block that's identified at the top of the site. That's the area that's proposed to be rezoned to, or that's proposed to be zoned open space. In terms of the zoning bylaw amendment, this figure shows the specifics and then details the specifics for the zoning bylaw amendment. And specifically what the end result would be is zoning, again, that would, where the FD is currently, would be zoning that would accommodate residential development in the form of single detached dwellings. And then in the northern portion would be an area that's zoned open space for a park. What this slide details are the current bylaw standards associated with the site versus what's being proposed. It provides some details related to the minimum lot area requirements, and what's being proposed is listed on the right-hand side of these columns. In general, the lot frontages vary from 12 meters to 16.7 meters, and the average is around 12.8 meters in terms of the frontages. So gives a snapshot of essentially what size of lots we're looking at in the proposed development. In terms of the specific exceptions, they're detailed on the table at the bottom. And two of the exceptions that are being proposed is a minimum front yard of 5 meters for some of the lots. Again, this isn't for all of them. And a minimum rear yard of 1.2 meters. And that just applies to some of the lots along the side of the development. In terms of comments, there's been preliminary comments provided by a number of agencies including the Conservation Authority and various utilities. What we will do is review these comments and provide responses back to all these comments in the preparation of the planning recommendation report. So just again, in terms of next steps, we're here tonight to receive comments from the public and to listen to those. We will prepare a subsequent staff report for consideration by council. What I would ask is that if comments can be provided in writing after the meeting, it just ensures that we make sure we have the fulsome comment and that we can adequately respond to those. But we will be taking notes today as well. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. I will now open this up to members of council. Are there any questions? Councillor Kett?
I have a few questions for the fellow that just left. I just wonder if you could go back to your slide with the RM3 zoning. Nope, back the other, just one more. One more. No, wrong one.
This one?
No, the description of the RM3s. Stop. Okay. So what we're looking at here is some of the lots are 50s. For us old people that still use feet and inches. So, on an M3, what are we putting on a 50-foot lot?
In terms of the built form,
Yes,
what's being proposed here are single detached dwellings. That's what's
single detached on 50s?
That's correct.
And what's our recommendations? Duplex, fourplex, link, semis?
There's no recommendations being prepared at this meeting tonight. What's proposed is a development application that would accommodate, there's a plan of subdivision being proposed, plus a zoning bylaw amendment to allow for, to permit, single-family dwellings.
Okay, now, has there been, you'll have to enlighten me, has there been any impact studies done on this subdivision? Do we know?
Through Madam Chair, Deputy Mayor, in terms of supporting studies submitted with the application.
As far as police, EMS, like anything like that? Is it,
Through you, Deputy Mayor, in terms of those studies, those aren't typical studies that are required for a planning application, and they're not a study that's required by the Act or by the Township's official plan.
okay, so what about transportation? I know that I was there jogging the other day, and it was a lot of traffic. Has there been a transportation study on Union especially?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, I believe there has been a transportation study. I'll confirm that for you, however. I will note that this development is located within a settlement area. It's designated for residential, but I will confirm whether there's
No,
been that.
I understand that, I'm just looking out for the people that already live there. All right, okay, thank you.
Counselor Somerville?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just a couple of questions. To continue on with Councillor Katz, has there been a traffic study done in that area? It seems like there's going to be a lot of houses in there, and there's going to be a lot of traffic coming out of Josephine and down Old Simcoe and down King Street and out onto Simcoe Street. How are we going to handle this?
Through you, Madam Chair, in terms of a traffic study identified, I believe there was one submitted. I will confirm and I will make sure. Sorry, yes, there was a traffic study.
And Director Heritage, do you know the results of that traffic study?
Through you, Madam Chair. On page 2 of the staff report, it identifies a traffic impact study brief that was submitted by the Municipal Infrastructure Group Limited on behalf of the applicant. So we're currently reviewing that study at this point in time.
And the findings of that will be included in the report to council, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Counselor Somerville, any further questions?
Yes, I have one further one. Another question that I highlighted was, on page 21, there's the high aquifer vulnerability area. And it could have negative impacts or cause contamination to the groundwater in the area. How are you going to handle that?
To you, Deputy Mayor, in terms of highly vulnerable aquifers and their impact on residential development, residential development in accordance with the source protection planning documents is not considered a significant threat. So it isn't applicable in this instance because it's residential development.
So, is there any wells left in that area at all, or are they all on town water?
I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that.
I do. There are some wells left in that area.
So would that have an effect to the wells?
I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that, and I would have to get back to you.
That is an important question. Thank you.
Any further questions, Counselor
No,
Somerville?
thank you.
Okay, Counselor Back.
And thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll just wait till he finishes typing. Did you get it?
Yeah.
Okay. If you can go back 2 slides, please. No, one more, I think.
That one there?
Yep.
No, it looks different.
Where's Ash? Yes. Sorry, I've got it a different way than yours. So where you have the park proposed, is this land that your company is actually donating, so to speak, as town property now for parkland, or is it an accumulation of the different development going on?
To you, Deputy Mayor, I'm the planning consultant for the municipality, so this is the development proposed by the proponent, firstly. And in terms of the park block, that would be a park block that's proposed to be dedicated to the municipality. In terms of, is it parkland that's associated with just this development, or is it associated with any historic or future proposed development? I will confirm that. I would anticipate that would be the case, though, however, because it is more than the 5% of the land, of the size of land that's necessary under the Planning Act, so.
And forgive me, because I'm used to Mr. Diamond as our planning consultant, so
Yeah.
He seems to be the only guy that I've ever seen come in here for the township, so forgive me for that. So where that's blocked is a rectangle right now. To the left of it that goes onto Ash Street, that sort of boulevard, so to speak, it looks like vacant land there. Just, and I can't turn it. That?
Okay, yeah.
What is that?
I'll have to review that, and we'll provide a response to you when we provide the recommendation report, but I'm not sure exactly what that is.
Okay, because to me, I look at this, if it is currently vacant land, it would be nice if that park got squared out to Ash Street, so that you can actually have more walkability and accessibility for the residents to actually want to go into the park.
Okay.
Just, otherwise, you know, you're just gonna, it just doesn't look right. So I just wondered if that was actually part of the park, and if not, if it could be added.
Director Heritage, did you want to comment on that?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. That portion of the lot was a park block with the Ribcorp subdivision. So the Ribcorp subdivision is surrounding this development, and that was considered as a park block when the Ribcorp draft plan was approved some time ago.
So that little, so this whole area then should be
It will be
brought out to Ash Street?
Yes, it will be amalgamated with
Okay.
the proposed park block.
Perfect, thank you.
Councillor Drew?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The page 19 of the report, under the background, it says 31 single detached dwellings, and later it says 28. Can you explain to me why the change?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, my understanding is that the original proposal was for that larger number of lots, and then through the review and through the preparation of the application, that it was reduced to the 28 lots from the original 31. So
Okay.
it's through the consultation process that it's been reduced.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from Councillor Watton?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just one question. With respect to the minimum lot frontage, I'm just a little confused. In the zoning bylaw 1414, it says that the lot frontage should vary between 12 meters and 16.7. And then if I read further on, it shows that the exception is that the minimum front is 5 meters, and is that I'm questioning, is that the same thing, and we're now reducing that with these exception lots, or I just need clarification? I'm trying to understand it, but it's not quite clear to me.
Yeah, certainly. Through you, Deputy Mayor, the difference is one's lot frontage and one is front yard. So lot frontage is the distance essentially along the street from lot line to lot line, and the front yard is the distance from the street to the front of the house. So those are the two differences.
So the front yard's like 5 meters?
On not all of the lots, on a few of them. On those lots, though, the garage would be recessed back so that there's sufficient room for a parking space.
Okay.
Any further questions from council? Councillor Drew?
Thank you. That just got me another question. A parking space or 2 parking spaces? I know that we had discussed to relieve parking on the street, that the driveways be sufficient to have 2 parking spaces in the driveway. Is that the case here?
It's my understanding the lot frontages are sufficient that each driveway could be a double-wide driveway.
Thank you.
Mr. Robinson, if you can actually just speak to what the widening or the urbanization of Josephine and what that would mean for parking in one example. Right now it is a very, very narrow road, as we're all aware, and if we're going to start increasing the traffic flow with cars parked on the road, how will we mitigate this with the urbanization of the road?
I'd have to defer that to Mr. Heritage in terms of Josephine Street and with respect to how that urbanization would occur, but my understanding is there would be an urbanization of that road, that it would be made wider, and that streetscaping would occur along that road, and also that there is a municipal requirement for one boulevard tree per lot as well, so that would be an additional requirement there. But maybe you want to add to that?
Through you, Madam Chair. The developer will be required to urbanize the north portion of Josephine. The township will be looking into contributing, and we'll look at that through our recommendation report, towards the urbanization of the south portion of Josephine, so it's dealt with on a comprehensive basis.
So just to confirm then, we wouldn't just urbanize one side of the road, it would be both sides that would be?
We'll be looking into doing both sides.
Okay, perfect. And on page 23 of our council agenda, which is page 8 of 16 of the report, it's regarding the comments from Kawartha Region Conservation Authority, and it's the fourth bullet down. Confirm to what extent the park block, which contains significant woodland, would be graded. So, as the ward councillor for that area, there are many, many concerns from the residents regarding that woodlot there and what that will do to the existing wildlife that does call that area home right now. Do we have any idea as to what the grading to that woodlot will be?
I'll have to defer that. I'm not sure there's been a decision made on what the use of that park would be, but...
Through you, Madam Chair, staff doesn't have a copy of a grading plan at this point in time. That will come in due course through the process. So we'll be reviewing that as part of the recommendation report as well.
Thank you, and by the looks of the residents that are in here, I'm sure there will be some public comment coming forth on that. Are there any other members of council? Councillor Kett?
Thank you. Just to Director Heritage, we're talking about the reurbanization of Josephine. I just wanted to make sure both sides are getting done and paid for by the developer.
Through you, Madam Chair, that is something that we can look at as part of the recommendation report when it comes forward to council.
So that's what I wanted to clarify. So right now, all we're suggesting is half of it, and then we'd be...
That, at this point in time, that's what the developer is suggesting, is that they would re-urbanize the north portion of the road.
Okay. Well, that's a good point to know, isn't it, though? So it doesn't cost us extra. Thank you.
Are there any further questions from council? Okay. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to this application? If so, please proceed to the microphone. We're actually going to we're asking them to come to the front. Oh, pardon me. I will now ask Scott Waterhouse of CanDevCom Limited to present information on the applications on behalf of the applicant. Mr. Waterhouse, please come forward to do your presentation, and then we'll go to the public comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Scott Waterhouse with CanDevCon Limited, 1600 Champlain Avenue, Whitby. With me tonight is Mr. David Brand in the audience, Principal with Chieftain Development Corporation. Madam Chair, I had planned a presentation, but the gentleman before me obviously touched on some of the key aspects of the proposed development and the applications before you this evening. So what I might do maybe, and I'm sure there's a lot of people from the public that would like to speak as well, maybe just try and answer some of the questions or add additional clarity to some of the questions that council had as part of my brief overview. So as mentioned previously, the plan of subdivision consists of 28 single-detached dwelling lots. So, and just to clarify, what we've applied for, what's been applied for, is detached dwelling lots, no semi-detached, no townhouse units, no attached built form. So it is detached built form, in terms of the subdivision and the zoning amendment application that's been applied for. So each lot has a frontage of approximately 40 feet, not less than 40 feet. Some, as noted by council, are larger, upwards of 50 feet and above. And each lot size is roughly 480 square meters. So certainly the lot sizes that are proposed, would complement the surrounding neighborhood quite nicely and are well in excess of the minimum requirements of the municipal zoning bylaw. So the plan, and I might just skip to the plan if I may. So what's on the screen now is just a colored version of the plan of subdivision that you were looking at previously. So hopefully this might add a little bit of additional clarity and context. So the 28 lots within the plan are the sort of darker orange color. 7 of those lots front onto Josephine Street, and the remaining lots are on the plan as you see there. The sort of lighter color, orange color, almost a yellow color, are part lots within the plan. And this is the difference between the 28 lots and the 31 lots that was raised before. So 28 full lots within this plan, and there are part lots within this plan that are proposed to develop with part lots within the adjacent Ribcorp Holdings plan of subdivision to form their own complete lot. So in the report, the reference to 31 lots is talking about some of those part lots that are included here. So the orange area, as I said, the 28 lots. The gray area are what would be the new roads within the plan. So that's the extension of Forest Lane Way from the Ribcorp Holdings plan of subdivision, and then a new cul-de-sac shown as Street A on the drawing. Plan, as noted, also includes a park block north of Street B, or the extension of Forest Lane Way. And as the previous gentleman mentioned, the intention is to combine that park block with park lands from the Ribcorp plan of subdivision to form a larger municipal park. Okay, so that's certainly the intention with the design. And just noting also, at the end of the cul-de-sac there is a landscape strip shown in green, Sac and Union Avenue. So I think there was questions about traffic and related there. So this plan that's been put to the municipality does not propose any new street access to Union Avenue. So the cul-de-sac would end as a cul-de-sac, and cars would not be able to access Union Avenue. And I think there was, other questions, just around lot frontage. So, as I said, the minimum lot size is about 40 feet. There are some larger lots proposed. The lots, I think, 8, 9, and 10 are upwards of 50-foot frontage, but the smallest lot is about 40 feet. And there was a question, I believe, about parking. So yes, with the lot sizes that are proposed, each dwelling would have a 2-car driveway, 2-car garage as well, to provide those off-street parking spaces. And I just wanted to, if I may, we just prepared a conceptual drawing for committee and council's benefit. It just provides a conceptual rendering of the top half is what will be the future Josephine streetscape on the north side of Josephine, just to give a bit of a visual sense of the intended design for this development in terms of height and scale, and a sense of the materials and possibly the colors that may be used. On the bottom half is the conceptual streetscape along Union Avenue. So going back to the plan, starting from the south and there near Josephine Street, you've got Lot 7, which is a flankage or corner lot at Josephine and Union, going into Lot 8, which would be the lot at the end of the cul-de-sac, and then going into what's identified here as Block 31, which is also the sort of end lot on the north side of that cul-de-sac. And just to note, the trees that are conceptually shown there between Lot 8 and Block 31 is that sort of landscape strip area at the end of the cul-de-sac, between the cul-de-sac and Union Avenue. So it just gives a bit of a visual representation of what this development is likely going to look like at the end of the day. So with that, Madam Chair, I may end my presentation. I think I maybe added some clarity to some of the questions that council and committee had, but certainly happy to answer any other questions that there may be.
Thank you, Mr. Waterhouse. Are there any questions from council? Councillor Drew?
Thank you. I was pleased to see on page 23 of our agenda that Kawartha Region Conservation Authority has talked about low-impact development. Can you tell me some of the examples of low-impact development that you are including in this development, please?
Through you, Madam Chair, to be honest, as the planner on the file, I'm not an engineer, but certainly in talking with the engineers, I can't elaborate on specifics at this time, but certainly I know the engineers work with the Conservation Authority quite a bit, and certainly I don't see that being an issue in terms of implementing low-impact development strategies here to satisfy both the Conservation Authority and the municipality. So I'm a little short on details for you tonight in that specific question, but I know it's a fairly common practice these days, becoming more and more common, and so I don't imagine it would be an issue in being able to satisfy their requirements.
Thank you. I'd like a question of staff at some point, and it has to do with all of the developments that are coming forward, so just let me know when it would be appropriate to ask that.
Thank you. Councillor Somerville?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Now, just right on that frame, there's the yellow, and you said there's 5-part lots. What do you intend to do with those 5-part lots?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Somerville. Yeah, so those part lots within this plan of subdivision would be combined with part lots from the adjacent Ribcorp Holdings plan of subdivision, and I've identified those almost as a muted orange color there, beyond the red boundary here. So the two part lots from the two different plans would combine to form full lots, not less than 40-foot frontage. That's the intention for those.
Perfect. Okay. Now, my other question is, homes look lovely. Absolutely gorgeous. What is the square feet of those homes?
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't know, I don't have a number for you. I don't know that it's been determined yet, but certainly, you know, the lot sizes, you know, at a minimum 40 feet by over 100-foot depth in a 2-story home. I would guess they're anywhere between 2,500 to 3,000 square feet, but I don't know that number's been determined yet, given that we're just at plan of subdivision stage.
And I think you can probably guess what my next question is going to be about the pricing of these homes. If they're going to be that big, they're going to be, how much would you be charging for these homes?
Through you, Madam Chair, again, I don't know what the price point would be. That would be something the principal of Chieftain would have to determine at the right time, but I just don't have an answer for you tonight on what the price point of those would be once they're put to market.
They're lovely homes. We need low housing. We need some houses that are cheaper in price, and because this is a community that people have to commute back and forth to, and we really do need something just more of a lower value. Love the homes, they're gorgeous, but if the architect could just maybe think about putting some smaller, more intensified homes in there, I think that might help a little bit.
Thank you, Councillor Somerville. Any further questions from council? If I may ask just about the landscape strip on the cul-de-sac, is there, and I'm unfamiliar with that in our other subdivisions that we've approved, is there access from the cul-de-sac to Union? Is it a walkable access, or is this an access that would be blocked off?
Madam Chair, I don't know that it's been determined yet, in a sense that with this site, obviously grades come into play with this. So what the township ultimately determines for the land or the area between the edge of pavement of the cul-de-sac and the sort of edge of pavement or the sidewalk on Union Avenue in terms of that area with vegetation and other infrastructure. I don't know that that's been determined yet, but I do know that this site has grades that would need to be, would probably come into the determination of what exactly is there and whether there is the possibility for a walkway or not.
Okay, thank you. Before I open, or thank Mr. Waterhouse, are there any further questions? Thank you very much. I will now ask if there are any members of the public who wish to speak to this application. I'm going to ask that you come to the front here. That way we can record you better, and for YouTube purposes, we can get a better view of the questions. And I am going to remind everyone that I need you to provide your full name and municipal address when you do come up, and that way we have a record. And the floor is yours, Mrs. Nino.
First of all, before I begin, I thank you for arranging the meeting. However, when you're sitting back there, you can't hear. I know I'm old, but hearing needs to be improved, as well as the diagrams that are up there. From the back, you can't see them. So that needs to be an improvement. Maybe put additional TVs back there that we can focus on the screens.
Thank you. And if you can, just your name and municipal address.
My name is Kathy Nino. I live at 12 Robin Trail here in Port Perry. And over the course of the 15 years I've lived here, I have attended many of the meetings that you have held with regards to the proposed subdivisions that affect us along Union Avenue. As many of them as I could, anyways. My first comment is going to be that I think that Scugog needs to improve laws that protect the cutting down of trees. If what goes on in Scugog went on in Toronto, there would be serious fines given to the developers or even homeowners for cutting down a tree over a certain amount of diameter. Here in Scugog, we don't seem to have those laws in place, and I'm asking for your help in that regard. What I'm going to address now are the new developments proposed by Ribcor and Chieftain. First of all, I'm asking Council to take a good look before you approve these proposals that have been put forward to you. Changes take place once you make approvals. For example, the setback allowance. When I've attended the other meetings, and we talked about driveways and garages, and will the cars actually fit in the garages? We spoke about that. And now we've come to an allowance proposal that would ask you for 2.5 meters. We might as well let them build right on the streets, because I don't know what we're going to do in the winter. The second one is the Chieftain proposal seems to have gone from 16 units to 28. That's almost double. Is that what we want? Of course, my main concern is habitat. Habitat is just not where you lay your head. It's what makes your place a home. The woodlot, now connecting Ribcor Development and Chieftain Developments, is a habitat at risk. In my 67 years of experience in watching new areas be developed, I've noted that it's far easier to say, whoops, I'm sorry for doing that, rather than obtaining the permission that is required before. This has happened here already. The land between Victoria and Josephine, Union and Ash. The woodland habitat that I am speaking about deserves to be protected. We cannot get it back once we allow it to be cut down. We cannot say it's okay to put in a new tree for every one you cut down, because the ones you put in will be 2 inches in diameter. That will take 50 years to become what it is now. At present, there are at least 5 fox cubs calling that woodlot home. The fox dens that are there are used year after year. We have all watched them, the ones on Robin Trail and Union Avenue who have shown interest. And after 14 and a half years of living on Robin Trail, I've watched the annual nesting return of the red-tailed hawks in that woods. That pattern has been disrupted by the tree cutting. Originally, it was to be dead growth only to be removed. Well, somehow, when no one was looking, viable trees were cut down, including the red-tailed hawk pine trees. How fair is that? They're not here to speak for themselves. The red-tailed hawk's nest at the top of the huge spruce trees has been gone. Not just dead trees. Go and take a look for yourself. Viable trees are missing. There's still lots of dead growth there. The woodlot is home to pileated woodpeckers, downy woodpeckers, flickers, nuthatches, goldfinches, and even saw-whet owls, which are very rare, just to name a few bird species. I personally have rescued many snapping turtles from the road along the woodlot. Guess their home, along with the chipmunks and squirrels and other nuisance skunks and raccoons, is to be part of that habitat demolition process. The rows of spruce trees along Union Avenue should be saved. These trees are habitat to the birds. As they are on municipal property, not privately builder property, it is council's responsibility to protect and preserve them. Only you can stop it now at this point. As I walk along my many routes I use for my daily walks throughout Port Perry, it is very noticeable that woodlots are at a scarcity. Before developments proceed, as these changes are inevitable, and I'm not fighting change, I am begging you that more consideration be given to the conservation of this particular woodlot and row of trees. Once again, we can't get it back once you say it's okay. As far as the projected park for the development, I hope then to consider that public opinion will be considered when the design of this park is put forward. Let the community speak up. The two parks that are at the bottom of Robin Trail, and I've spoken to this before at other meetings, are useless. They are impractical and not used by any child. Given the land that is at the bottom of Robin Trail, why not put more money towards developing a park that is more suitable for children than one that sits there unused? Once again, may I draw your attention to Kingsway Forest in Oshawa, advertised and sold as great forest property. If you want to take a ride downtown line again, see if you can find the forest. The only thing that's there is the college now. It's all subdivision. If you want to take a look at parks, take a ride to Oshawa, Whitby, or Brooklyn, and take a look at what's provided. Please, plan long-term. Make the builders do what you want, not what they want. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Nuno, and your comments will definitely be included. Thank you. Any further of the public wish to speak to this application? Just come forward if you do. And again, just as a reminder to state your name and municipal address, please.
Good evening. My name is Betty Hodgins. I live at 35 Lewis Way. I'd like to concur with the previous presentation. I came tonight to become informed as to what the proposed plans are, and unfortunately, with no documentation in hand and the inability to actually see the screens and keep up with the information being presented, I'm really at a loss to be able to provide any reasonable or informed feedback. So with that in mind, I would ask council to provide us with documentation, or I suppose if we make the request, we can obtain some?
You certainly can. All of our council agendas are posted online as well, so you would be able to get a copy of the reports that we're referring to, and they're typically posted by 4 o'clock the Wednesday prior to our council meeting. So, yes, you do have to do a little bit of investigation for it, but they certainly are available.
So the presentation that we saw tonight would also be
The
available?
presentations from tonight, Mr. Clerk, those would not be on our website. We only received them today, so they're not on our website. And how would the public ask the planner?
As soon as they're, through you, Madam Chair, as soon as they're available, we will have hard copies in our file that anyone can come in and have a look at.
Wonderful.
And what would be the timeline then for a response?
As far as any questions that you have on them?
Public commentary?
So, and I will defer to Director Heritage in a moment, but typically what happens at these meetings is that the public provides their comment, and the planners then take all the comments from it, and a staff report is provided to council based on the comments that we heard this evening.
Mm-hmm.
With the election coming up there, and there's 2 council meetings after, or one after this, it likely won't be until the new year before a report is brought forward to the new council at that point. Having said that, I'm sure if you contact Diane Knutson, in a few weeks, she'll definitely have the presentations available.
That's wonderful.
And you'll go on the mailing list, because you spoke tonight, you'll go on the mailing list. So anytime there's any updates to this planning application, you'll be mailed the updates.
Oh, thank you. And just one last point that I would like to make. I would like to concur with the previous presenter as well regarding the woodlands in this area. There is a lot of wonderful wildlife there. There are a lot of young families in the area, and I think a growing and deep appreciation for our natural habitat is something that this community should be encouraging. So I would certainly ask council to keep that in mind as you go forward in your deliberations.
Thank you very much. And just, well, I know you can start coming up now, Deb, but just so the public is aware that today we're not approving a subdivision. What we're doing is, this is the public consultation portion of the meeting, so by us receiving this presentation does not indicate that we've approved anything. We're just receiving comments. If you can state your name and your municipal address, please.
My name's Debbie Cornell. I live at 30 Josephine Street, which is, our property would be directly across from lots probably 4, 5, 6, and 7. We share 4. There's only 2 houses on the south side of Josephine Street on that hill. One thing, I've got some questions here that we've put down together, my husband and I. Where are the sewer allocations coming from? This development wasn't on the list on the books when the non-quan was expanded. So is there still allotments being provided for sewer for the houses in Prince Albert that are still on septic?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, there are allocations associated with the existing homes that are on septic for sewer development.
Okay, so does this subdivision go in order of the other ones that have applied, or is it a first come, first served, whoever has the number?
Through you, Madam Chair, it's first come, first served, based on entering into a subdivision agreement with the municipality.
Okay.
And just to let you know, Madam Chair, there are 3 components to the sewage allocation in the Township of Scugog. One is, it's allocated to new development. There's a certain proportion that's allocated to new development. There's a certain portion that's allocated to our employment area, and there's a certain allocation allocated to lots in Prince Albert that are on private services.
Okay, thank you. And we were wondering what the plan was for the reconstruction of Josephine, but that has been answered, so it would be all at once. You're gonna do the whole road, you're not gonna just do the hill and then do the top end, as we call it, behind the cemetery, that section, separately. It would all be done in conjunction at one time? Or is it gonna go? All right. Our other concern was when Ripcor had submitted their plans, the sidewalk was going to be on the north side of Josephine on the hill, not the south side, so I just want to confirm that that would still be, as in the plan now, is the sidewalk's going to be on the north side, not in our big ditch. On Josephine.
Through you, Madam Chair, no, I don't at this point in time, but that's something that we will look into as part of coming forward with a recommendation report.
All right. And our only concern is, we've been living in our house for 41 years, so my kids grew up feeding the cows, not the houses that are on each side of Union Ave. Our concern is the hill on Josephine looks really small, because we bought the house in August, and then we hit our first snowstorm and ice storm, and found out how nasty that hill is. And I have mentioned this at several meetings when Ripcor was presenting theirs, that putting more traffic onto Josephine Street, when it's only 17, 19 feet wide, and Ash Street is 28 feet wide, the math doesn't work. That's just straight. But if you have more people pulling out of their laneway onto Josephine Street on a snowstorm or an ice storm, first, where are they going to put the snow? Because we have enough trouble with them trying to put the snow there now. And are you going to allow parking? Because if you've got parking on that hill, I invite you all to bring your lawn chair, come sit on my front lawn during an ice storm, and we will phone Brian's Towing and every other towing company around here as they just pile up at the stop sign, because that's what's going to happen. And somebody's going to get hurt. So I really think you have to seriously look at having no parking on the hill, on both sides. Right now, if you park on Josephine, be it on the hill or on the flat behind the cemetery, you can only get one car wide down that street, and you are not going to be able to empty all of these houses onto it. When it comes to the woodlot, I can verify we have got fox, we have deer that come up across my front lawn, we have coyotes too. But all of the rest of it, we have actually, my husband and I have been in scouting for over 40 years, had to go on the computer to find out that we have Cooper's hawks in that wooded lot area. I understood that there was supposed to have been a study with Ripcor, because they were going to send an arborist in on Mrs. Baird's private property to check out the woodlands, and that those were supposed to have been protected, a very large chunk of those. Our other question is if you're urbanizing Josephine Street, we have 202 feet of frontage on our property, and the only place that doesn't have a tree is the laneway. I really don't want to lose any of my trees, so somebody else can have one tree in the boulevard across the road, because I know Bobby walks past our house regularly and enjoys the shade. And everybody else parks in the shade on the hill while they take a break with their walks, or stop, and some of the workers stop and have lunch in their car in the shade of my trees that we've been babying for 41 years. My other concern, and I have to appreciate the layout and the not intense density of housing, Is the cul-de-sac going to be big enough for emergency services? I am a firefighter's child, and I have 2 kids that are on fire departments. Have we looked at that road, that it is easily accessible by first responders? Be it police, ambulance, fire truck. That's a concern. Other than protecting my trees and making sure that it's safe for everybody, the houses look nice. I'd be thrilled if there was only 6 instead of, or 5 instead of 7 on Josephine on the Hill. But I appreciate the drawings of the proposed housing. That's something that RIBCOR, I never saw. So thank you very much for presenting that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So going back to some comments that Mrs. Munio had made, I have a question for Director Heritage. So those trees that are on Union, are they municipal, are they in the Boulevard municipal property, the large trees?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, that's something that we will definitely look at. Based on the plans that we've received to date, it looks like they're very close to the lot line, the boundary, and we will look at that.
Okay, then, and that spawns another question. Just say that they are an inch off of township property. We have many bylaws and zoning and whatnot that come here that ask for exemptions. Is there any way that we can do a reverse exemption in a sense that the township states to the developer the setbacks and adjust those, that becomes a municipal tree? If it's a matter of inches or a foot, just in the sense to save, you know, a 50 or 100-year-old tree, I think that's important. Is there ever an instance where a municipality will claim that space to save a tree?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, there are a number of instances where the municipality has asked or requested a developer to dedicate lands for environmentally significant lands. We've done that to the north in the draft plan that's immediately adjacent to the lake, where a 30-meter buffer is required, and we were able to have those lands dedicated to the municipality. As far as the location of the trees in this situation is concerned, that is something, and the preservation of those trees, that's something that requires further discussion with the applicant.
May I ask or request that gets documented, because some of us may or may not be here in the next few months, and that's important, and I would like to ensure that if possible, can happen, because I'd hate to see those trees go as well. Now, if it happens and luck's on our side, that it is on municipal property, would there ever be a reason to cut those trees down to aid the developer? Or can the municipality say, this is a no-go zone, you're not cutting those trees, you need to go around the other way to do whatever your grading and building is?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, there are a number of considerations that have to be taken into account. You have to take into account the proposed lot fabric, have to take into account the proposed grading. You have to take into account the road alignment, emergency access to the proposed road from Union Avenue. All those matters have to be taken into consideration, and that's something that we'll be certainly looking at as part of the next staff report that would come forward to council.
Okay, so I'm looking at Union Avenue right now, and I see a red perimeter line on Union, with the addition of a landscape strip. So to me, there is no access for vehicles off of Union Avenue south of proposed Forest Lane Way. Is that correct?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, that open space strip, it would depend on what nature of the plantings or what types of plantings that would go into that open space, and whether the fire department would require an emergency access from Union to that proposed.
But I'm assuming that there's more larger trees from Josephine up to that green strip, and then from the yellow strip up to the muted orange?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, there are a number of mature trees in that location, yes.
Oh, sorry, my mic wasn't on. There's trees the entire length.
So I'm just thinking, if we have a landscape strip, I can't imagine a fire truck plowing down through a landscape strip to begin with. So hopefully those trees in that green section there can be saved as well. And secondly, another point Mrs. Nunio had made with regards to parks, and I completely agree with her. Sometimes it looks like a nuclear bomb went off in some of the parks, that with well-intentions and very expensive park equipment, there's no children. But then there are other parks that are so well designed and probably a lot more money went into. For example, and I call it Kinney Park. I know it's called something else, but it is in the north part of Whitby. That park has hundreds of children, as a park should be. There's nothing lonelier than a park with children's equipment and not a kid in sight. So I do hope that this park here gets some great design, and as Mrs. Nunio said, community input. And I don't know how that would be set up with a second meeting, or if letters go out to the community and we have a online survey as we have with the budget. But if the families with young children and the grandparents with their grandchildren actually have input in this park and the design, could be a wonderful thing. So how do we go about park design with community involvement? Director Heritage?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, that's something that can be discussed in the next staff report. I also note for council's information too that the report that was submitted by the applicant, the tree preservation report, is recommending that only 6 trees be removed from the park block. So that is the current submission from the applicant.
Okay, but when I was talking about trees, I was discussing on Union Avenue. Okay, all right, thank you.
Councillor Kett.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. It sounds awfully tempting sitting in a lawn chair in the middle of an ice storm, but it spawned a question. We spoke about the full road being done, full Josephine?
No, Councillor Kett, I believe it's just the portion to the cemetery entrance.
Is that what it is? So would that include services?
The developer will be required to provide services to those single detached dwellings that front onto Josephine.
Okay, but the services would go up Josephine, so other people could hook up if they...
I'm not sure if the services are along Josephine or they're being introduced internally from the draft plan.
Okay. So it's just up to the cemetery. The other one is, we were informed a couple of years ago about the sewer allocation for Prince Albert. It's there for the houses that are existing, and it's not going to change. Is that correct?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, that's correct.
Yeah, okay. That's great, thank you.
Are there any for Councillor Watton?
Thank you. I just have one question with respect to the first resident, and I'll ask Director Heritage. I'm not clear, but has there been work done already with respect to the subdivision? Just in the reference about the live trees and the dead growth trees being removed and the red-tailed hawk's nest and so on, has there already been preliminary work done, or is that something different?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, I'm not aware of any preliminary work that's been done. The only work that's been done on this site was the removal of the young dwelling, and the applicant proceeded through the Heritage Museum Advisory Committee, and they supported the removal of that dwelling.
Councillor, oh, sorry. Pardon me, Councillor Watner, are you finished? Okay, Councillor Drew?
Thank you. Just to clarify, there has been a tremendous amount of trees removed from that property. As Mrs. Cornell has stated, I walk by there all the time, yeah.
Are there any further questions from council? Mrs. Cornell, if I'm abiding by the rules of the council meeting, I'm not to entertain from the floor. However, if you would like to come to the microphone, and if you have a question, I will gladly accept your question.
I actually have an answer for you. There are those of us that are still on wells also, and I'm not sure if it's this developer or who did it, but we had a company come to our house and asked if we would sign consent that, at no charge to us, while there's construction going on, they will monitor our well's water level and do water testing for contamination, so that if the construction results in damage to our well, then somebody else is going to pay for it.
Director Heritage, could potentially you look into who that may have been, if it's for the Ribcorp development, or if it was for Chieftain? I don't expect that you would know right now.
Yes, Madam Chair, I'll look into that.
Thank you.
Yeah, whoever it was, thank you. I'd like to thank them. One suggestion I just remembered is that in this park area, which is awesome, that we look at making it have accessible pathway, leave the trees, an accessible pathway. We do have older people in the neighborhood now. We have a lot of people sizing down, moving into the neighborhood and buying up the bungalows, so there's the suggestion, make a bungalow. But due to people's mobility problems, and it's not just elderly people, we do have young people that have mobility problems, that it would be lovely if they could make that accessible. And I think that's it, but that answers your question on the wells, and somebody at least is trying to take care of us.
Thank you. Okay, any further questions from council? Councillor Somerville.
Yes, I just have one quick question. I don't know whether it's been answered or not, but I see Ash Street is coming out on Josephine Street. Is that correct, Mr. Heritage?
Yes, it is. If you look at the diagram that's up right now, it shows that...
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, yes, the Ash Street will continue south and hit Josephine, so through the Ribcorp development.
Yeah, that's a big concern to me, because now we have a through street that comes all the way down from 7A, with a lot of traffic coming through onto Josephine. Then we have 7. We have 7 lots coming out, as well as the people that live on Josephine coming out onto Union Avenue. I am quite concerned about that. I think we are overloading a street, And I think, and especially if that street happens to be a very slippery slope, as it has been told it is, I think we are looking into trouble. And I'm going to ask that you review that, whether Ash Street is made into a cul-de-sac would be just probably a better idea, instead of letting it come all the way through. I'll leave it with you, Mr. Heritage. I'm not at all pleased with the way that comes through, because I think we're going to be in a lot of trouble with a lot of traffic.
And Councillor Somerville, I believe we have already approved Ribcorp's development. Yeah. Okay, thank you for attending and providing your input into the statutory public information meeting. This concludes this portion of the meeting, and I will now ask council if we can entertain bringing forward the report, the staff report, 11.1 Dev-2018-30. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Watton, seconded by Councillor Drew. Are there any questions to this report? I'm not sure if there's any left. Okay, perfect. All right. If none, all those in favor? Carried. We're now going to move on to the second. Oh, yes, if you were only here to attend the Chieftain development, you may leave now. We're finished with that section. You're welcome to stay. We're happy to actually have people in the audience, so it's nice for us. So please stay if you like. But we are going to move on to the next development now, Oxnard, and I'll just give a few minutes. Councillor Watton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just wondering if consideration could be given to moving our delegates up of 10.2 in consideration that I believe one of them has to leave shortly, and I'm not sure that our second planning consideration will be finished in time.
I would support that. They have 5 minutes to speak, so hopefully we'll be able to accommodate them then. If you don't mind, we'll just move them forward in the agenda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. And whenever you are ready. Councillor Watton?
And at this point, I should declare a conflict of interest.
Thank you.
And I'm the director of this board.
Thank you, Councillor Watton. Please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you. And thank you for moving us up. Much appreciated. My name is Crystal King, and beside me I have Katrina Watton, and we are here on behalf of Cartwright Sports and Recreation. We're here to give you an update about who we are, what we do, what we're accomplishing, and what we need help with in the future. We'll go through briefly who we are. I think most of you know who we are and have been to our fields, but we'll update everybody anyway. We are a not-for-profit charitable organization, and we basically exist to help maintain and improve upon and grow Cartwright Fields to what we envision it to be. If you've been there before, you know Cartwright Fields is a huge parcel of land, probably one of the biggest parks in the area, so it takes a lot to get things accomplished. What we have accomplished so far, the expansion of our walking trails, and actually a lot of people don't even know these trails exist. They just think it's some forest beside the property, but there's extensive trails and it's beautiful. And we maintain them ourselves, usually twice a year with trail days with volunteers. In 2002, we introduced a second baseball diamond. We have 2 soccer fields. We've upgraded the baseball diamonds we currently have with new backstops and screens in 2013. Permanent fences on both diamonds completed in 2015 and 2017. We've replaced the bleachers. We have indoor and outdoor storage for equipment.
With the help of the township this year, we now have a disc golf course, which is currently fully operational. We do plan to have a grand opening for this at our Cartwright Fall Festival at the end of the month. As Wilma, or Councillor Watton, stated at the beginning, we do plant memorial trees throughout the park. It is a great way to put new trees in the park, but also a dedication to loved ones from the area. How we do it? Lots of volunteers. We have 11 board members. Our fundraising events in the past include Winterfest. We haven't done that lately just because winter has been extremely unpredictable. We do a comedy night in February. That has always been sold out. In the spring, we have a golf tournament, usually late May, early June at Sunnybrae Golf Course. It's always well attended. Coming up soon is our Fall Festival and Classic Car Show. Many of you have attended this event. Some of you, I think, are judges in our chili cook-off. And we've added the car show in the past few years, which has increased the traffic flow throughout, especially if it's a nice day. We apply for Trillium grants, seed grants, municipal grants. We basically apply for anything we can get our hands on. Anything that we think applies to what we're trying to do, we try and get. We also have dozens of small businesses in the area that contribute to every single event that we put on. Same sponsors all the time. Our main goals for 2019, the LED lighting project on the Upper East Diamond. What we're trying to do is move one of the posts. If you've been up there, there's a post in the middle of the field. Not really safe. We're looking to replace the current light standards with up-to-date, with the correct height, replace old bulbs with LED bulbs to help with nighttime vision, hydro consumption, and overall safety. We definitely have some dark zones in the outfield now, and replace the old wiring with updated wiring. Our second goal is to resurface and add tile drainage to the Upper East Diamond. We definitely have drainage issues at our top diamond, and we're looking to start that project soon with new drainage tiles in the outfield. Why we're trying to do this, the majority of our users right now are baseball, softball, so we're trying to make it safe and more appealing for everybody to come use our diamonds. Future goals, we're looking to expand the parking lot because so many people come and use our facilities. When all the facilities, the soccer, both baseball diamonds, something's happening at the hall, people are there walking their dogs, the place is full. There's nowhere to park. We also are looking at making the bottom diamond accessible. Right now, it's just a grass hill, so you have to walk down to it, and anybody who has any sort of reason for accessibility issues can't get down there. They often sit on the hill to watch their children, grandchildren. We're looking for screens on the lower diamonds to help with shade from the sun, covered shelters. The bottom diamond needs to have the top, or the red clay topped up. It hasn't been done since it's been built. LED lighting on the bottom diamond to complete tree plantings throughout the park. Install barrier fences and trees on the west side of the hall for vehicle control, complete west parking area and install lights, lighted entrance sign and widening of west driveway, and removal of existing east driveway. We actually have a driveway we don't technically need anymore, so we'd like to get rid of that too. What we need your help with. So currently, project number 1 is the lighting project. We are asking the township staff to support to complete the LED lighting project at a total expense of $170,000. Please note that this figure does not include tax or contingency. We currently have raised and put aside $20,000 to fund the project, and are requesting that the township match our contribution of $20,000. Our hope is to apply for a Trillium grant to fund the rest of the project, and we're hoping to complete this in 2019. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from council? Councillor Drew?
Well, just a comment, congratulations on all the work you've done. I've been to the fields many times, and they are beautiful, beautifully kept. So congratulations on that, and on your planning for the future. I'm wondering if, Madam Chair, if this would be an opportunity to refer this request to the budget process for 2019?
I would suggest that, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Well, we do commend you for the fundraising that you guys do. It's very easy for us to refer something to the budget when you come already doing a lot of fundraising. So, right now I have it moved by Councillor Drew, and are we moving it with the...
Receive the presentation and refer it to the budget.
Perfect. Can I have it seconded by Councillor Back? Any questions? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you, ladies, very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, now we're going to go back to the planning stuff. This portion of the meeting has been set aside for a joint statutory public information meeting held under Sections 34 and 51 of the Planning Act for applications for a zoning bylaw amendment and a plan of subdivision submitted by Bryce Jordan of GHD on behalf of Oxnard Port Perry, Inc., on a portion of the Royal Canadian Legion property located at 484 Bay Street, Port Perry. It is important that the public express their views either in person or in writing prior to decisions being made by the councils of the Township of Scugog or the Region of Durham. Please be advised that the Ontario Municipal Board was replaced by the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal, LPAT for short, on April 3rd, 2018. If you wish to file an appeal of either council's decision to the LPAT, you must first speak to the matter at this public meeting or provide a written submission before a zoning bylaw amendment is passed by Scugog or a plan of subdivision is approved by the Region of Durham. If you don't, you will not be added to as a party to a hearing by the LPAT unless the tribunal determines there are reasonable grounds to do so. Public notice was served by the Township of Scugog in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act. I will now welcome back Jamie Robinson of MHBC Planning to present information on the applications on behalf of the Township of Scugog and the Region of Durham. Mr. Robinson, it's all yours.
Thank you. So this is the second public meeting as well, and again, this one is for a zoning bylaw amendment and a plan of subdivision application. The site's identified on the screen currently. It's the hatched-in area of the port of the Legion property that's subject to the application. It's got frontage on Balsam Street. Just in terms of the proposed development, what we've got is this subject land is currently designated residential, so again, it's an area that's earmarked for future residential development. It's got the community facility zoning as well as a residential multiple type 4 zoning. In terms of the lot area, it's just about 1.5 acres, and it's got 158 meters of frontage on Balsam Street. What's being proposed here, and I'll show you a sketch on the a draft plan, on the next page, which identifies that what's being proposed are 18 semi-detached lots. Each of those semi-detached lots has a proposed frontage of 8.5 meters. And again, the proposal is for a zoning bylaw amendment as well. What the existing zoning is RM4-1. What that zoning permits currently is a higher density of development than what's actually being proposed. So it's a down zoning of sorts in terms of what's being proposed from a density perspective. And again, the lots are 18 semi-detached lots with 8.5 meters of frontage. So this next sketch identifies the subject lands and identifies the proposed layout. As you can see, there's 9 numbers along the bottom. Those are the 9 lots that are proposed. Each of them would contain a semi-detached dwelling associated with it. So the lot frontages, again, are about 8.5 meters of what's being proposed. And then the remaining lands would remain as part of the Legion property. That's the northern portion of the site. So just in terms of the current zoning is identified in the second column. The permitted use under the current zoning is for a 40-unit nonprofit housing development comprised of 1- and 2-bedroom units. And what's being proposed is an 18 semi-detached units. So again, it is somewhat of a down zoning. In terms of the minimum lot area, the minimum lot area of what's being proposed is 320 meters. That compares to the lot area requirements of the RM3 zone, which are the standard, which are 280 square meters. So it's slightly larger than what the minimum requirement is. From the lot frontage requirement, it's proposed to be reduced by 0.5 of a meter down to 8.5 meters. So there's specific relief being requested from the zoning bylaw in that regard. In terms of the specifics, the proposed amendment is to allow for only semi-attached dwellings. So it'll be a very specific zoning that applies that's earmarked for the proposed development. Again, we've received comments from a number of agencies. Those comments aren't reflected in the staff report that's prepared at this time. Again, this is a staff report that's for the public meeting purposes only, and there will be a recommendation report prepared after that will consider all the comments that are provided. So in terms of next steps, staff will complete a fulsome review following this meeting where they will look at all the comments. We'll look at from both the agencies and the public, and then there would be a subsequent staff recommendation report prepared, and the timing of that would likely be in the new year as well, given the election and the upcoming change of council. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from council? Councillor Somerville?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have some concerns about changing the zoning. This is the only land we've got left in town for low-income housing, and seniors are disabled, and it's our last chance to get this right. If we're going to let this land go, we're going to lose it. The problem is, with that land, it's great to have, what did you say there you had? Can you just go back a couple of slides there, because you said just next one. Oh, no, next one. Okay, 40 units of nonprofit housing, and you're dropping it down to 18. This is really an important piece of property, that we stick with the nonprofit. We have no other area in Port Perry to go on. This is our very last piece of property. If we take that away, we don't have anything left for nonprofit housing. This area is close to the hospital, it's close to the doctor's office, it's close to community care, it's and close to the grocery store, so people can get to the grocery store. I don't think we can let this property go into high-density, high-cost housing when low housing is needed so badly in this town. And to the Legion and to the veterans' legacy, I think we need to honor the request that they had back in 1993, I guess it was, yes, where they made that into, or they were hoping to have that into nonprofit housing development, where they could have 1 to 2 bedrooms that the Legion had contemplated, and I really think that we should leave it at the 40-unit nonprofit housing development where it once was, and not change it over to the 18 semi-detached dwellings. Thank you.
Those are all your questions?
That's it. That's my statement. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Kett.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just have one question for Director Heritage. We have a commitment as far as density that we have to make, or an allotment?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, there is a commitment for intensification sites. There are particular intensification sites that are identified in the official plan.
But isn't there a number that we go by, or is it just sites? Is there a percentage?
Through you, Madam Chair, there is a minimum in the growth plan. There's a minimum density target, and there's minimum intensification targets that are identified. Those intensification and density targets aren't applied on a site-specific basis. They're applied on a municipal-wide basis or an urban area-wide basis. So, but in effect, individual sites do have an impact on those density targets, and as part of the recommendation report, this report's an information report, so as part of the recommendation report to council, staff will definitely be considering those intensification targets and those policies and the impact this site may have or not have on those.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because that's my concern, is that we have definite targets that we have to try and meet. Thank you.
Mr. CAO just reminded me that we will likely exceed them once Stockworth is developed. Okay, sorry, back on to the questions. Councillor Drew.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just wondering where the people from Balsam Street can access the park that's adjacent to Bay Street. It looks like a lot that's to the, I'm looking on page 34 of the report, but that lot to the right, to the east of the property, looks like there's housing on there. So how do people from Balsam access the park?
Director Heritage, do you?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor. There are a couple of important points here. One is that this park that's being referred to is not a designated park. It is designated residential in the official plan, and it's privately owned. These lands are privately owned by the Legion. They're not owned by the municipality.
Having said that, the park has been there for the use of the public forever, and the people from Balsam Street cannot access it, so something to consider.
Thank you. Councillor Back.
Thank you. So, going to, actually, it's great that this screen is up right now. So I see it saying other lands owned by applicant, and that's the land on Bay Street and adjacent to the Legion. And I also heard our consultant state that that is owned by the Legion, which I'm not sure if that's correct, because the applicant is Oxnard. Can someone please confirm who owns the land on Bay Street, the section that's not currently under application?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Back. At this time, there are 2 severance applications in process, whereby Oxnard Port Perry Inc. will own the lands, the subject lands of tonight's application, as well as a portion of the balance of the Legion lands. At this time, the Legion, I believe, owns the entire parcel, as one parcel.
The entire parcel, including the proposed?
Yes.
Lots 1 to 9?
That's correct. The Legion owns the entire lands that belong to the Legion today. They are being severed to accommodate this development at the bottom, and then Oxnard Port Perry Inc. Has plans on purchasing the top part minus the Legion building itself and the parking lot.
Okay, so I have another question to that. So I know when this, I guess, initially was brainstormed, Oxnard had stated their intention of leaving the little, I guess it would be northeast corner where the little ball diamond is. So what you're stating is that may or may not continue if there's a second application pending a sale of this land?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Back, that's correct. It will be up to Oxnard to, if they choose to develop that entire portion of the property, we will see future applications come in for that.
Okay. And as Councillor Drew had stated, I'm quite aware that this park has been there for a very long time, but I also appreciate that the Legion owned this land, maintained this land, and offered it as an unofficial park for the residents for many years at their financial cost, which was very generous of them. And, you know, we can't just assume that because a park was generously accessible to the residents that it will continue. So it will be interesting to see on future applications if the proposed new owner, if the sale goes through, would consider, though, homage to that use, even if it's in a smaller scaled park. Now, I've also, I've got many questions, because this is my ward. I see that they are semi-detached, and I'm just wondering if there's any possibility that these could be links, like what happened in the ravines of Cockers Creek Part 2? Director Heritage? Because semi-detached does not fit with the existing homes on Balsam. I know Bay Street has, but Balsam does not. Is there any way that these could be links and they look like detached homes?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, that's something that the applicant could consider as part of the application submission.
Okay, well, if that could be noted, because to me, if we are infilling an intensification, so to speak, I think that's very important that it fits with the existing community. There's also on page 37 or 6 of 14 of our report, with regards to proposed relief. Again, the 8.5 meter relief required, does this frontage fit with the existing neighborhood? I don't think it does. There's a home on the corner of Old Simcoe and Balsam, and then there are homes after to the east of Lot 9 onward, and those homes are set back quite a distance from the road. So how does that fit with existing neighborhoods, to fit in existing neighborhoods? Also with drainage, with water, stormwater. This is a lot of square footage of home on a small property, and you have homes adjacent to it that are not similar. And I know, as you do, we've had a lot of problems with infill homes and then existing homes having problems. So how will that stormwater drainage be sorry, I'm addressed. Thank you. I've had a long day. Director Heritage?
Through you, Madam Chair, that's something that we will take into account in the review of the development application.
Okay, so may I ask if a majority of a lot in an infill is going to be square footage of a house versus land, which would absorb the rainwater with existing neighborhoods infilling? How do we address that?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, the zoning bylaw permits a maximum building coverage of 40% on the lot. And in terms of stormwater drainage, we're looking at that through a stormwater management plan that will be required to be submitted in conjunction with the application.
May I ask if, when these are built and all the due diligence from the township is completed, if there are water issues, then what happens to the existing neighbors that are there? What are the measures that they take? If all of a sudden, where they didn't have rainwater, stormwater on their property, now they do, then what does the township do?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, that's the intent of submitting a stormwater management plan. It's to ensure that stormwater that is generated on on a proposed lot does not have any impacts on adjacent lots. That's the purpose of the plan, and it requires approval from the municipality.
I appreciate that, but what happens when water, if indeed all plans aside, water now is coming on to existing homes? what do those homeowners do? Is it the township's responsibility to fix it, the developer's responsibility to fix it? How long out does that happen if, just say, a developer purchases and develops homes, and stormwater becomes an issue a year in or 2 years in?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, if the developer has not complied with the requirements of the stormwater management plan, it's the responsibility of the developer to fix the situation.
Even years after?
Within 1 or 2 years, yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I have another question with regards to this being a proposed, I guess, sale and severing of lands. I know that Chimney Hill and Bay Street and Old Simcoe there, that is a terrible offset intersection, and neighbors on all sides would like to see a four-way stop. I had requested in the first year of council for that to happen, but I was told because it's an offset intersection, that could not occur until two items had happened. One was the old house on the northwest side, which is now going to be part of the ravines of Cockers Creek, until the homeowner had transferred land, and that has occurred. And the other was that if the Legion were to sell their property for development, that some of that land at the front of the Legion would be used to make this a properly squared intersection. Will that occur? Because I do not want to lose the opportunity. I was told this in my first year of council of this term, that those two items had to occur, and they have magically occurred. And this needs to be a four-way stop, so I don't want to lose the opportunity when we're in this stage of the game to drop that ball. Is that occurring?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Back, as a result of the severance of the Legion property in the area of the building at the corner, the township has required a road widening there, which shows on that drawing. And it'll be up to the Director of Public Works to implement that four-way stop into a program for Public Works. We are acquiring the land in which we can realign the intersections. That's the purpose.
Okay. May I request that that gets noted, because I really do not want to see this opportunity pass us by. I do have more, just give me a second. Will there be a cash in lieu of park if a park is not designated on this parcel of land?
Through you, Madam Chair, every development application under the Planning Act requires cash in lieu of parkland or parkland dedication, so that would be a condition of draft approval.
Thank you. And it's going to either be one or two more. On page 35, with regards under the discussion 2.1, where it states that the application of this land is currently zoned urban residential multiple type 4, exception 1, RM 4-1, right now is only for a 40-unit non-profit housing development, now requested to be changed for these semi-detached homes. And then while I respect Councillor Somerville's statement, I need to state that having a 40-unit non-profit housing development, first off, non-profit is usually initiated by the province and in conjunction with the region with regards to housing, and they are not the owners of this land, and they had not come forth to the Legion, to my knowledge, with interest in purchasing this land. And I don't think it's the township's place to tell a landowner what they're going to build, and I don't think also there's not many instances where private developers will build not-for-profit. It goes against capitalization, really. It has to be a government-initiated development. So those that are in attendance that live on Balsam and Bay and Old Simcoe, I'm sure would actually be quite grateful that this is going to be, although I would like to see them detached as links, more fitting in with the existing residential area, because I can't imagine if you have a home and you've looked on a field, which people have thought of as a park, now to have a 4- or 5-story apartment building, regardless if it is not-for-profit or if it were to be condominiums. It does not fit in that particular parcel of land, and I don't think it's our council's place to tell a developer or a landowner what to build.
Are there any further questions from Councilor Kett?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just want to bring to the attention points that Councilor Back was making, because I'd hate to think that we'd get in the position that Ajax is in right now with so much hardscape that they're having problems with the flooding of the water. So I think that might be a good suggestion, is to look better into the stormwater, because this actually does go straight down into the lake.
Thank you. Any further questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Robinson. I will now ask Bryce Jordan of GHD to present information on the application on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Bryce Jordan of GHD. Our address is 65 Sunray Street in Whitby. With me this evening in the audience is Mr. Jeff Jaffapour. He is the principal of Oxnard Development, and members of the staff are here as well listening to the comments. I don't have anything to add to Mr. Robinson's information. I did, while I was here, wanted to clarify that in terms of the severances, what happened is at one point in time the Legion was looking to create 2 parcels. Retain the Legion building and have the parcel fronting onto Bay and the parcel fronting onto Balsam. On the Bay Street, that would have included the privately owned park, and for want of a better term. The severances were approved, and the Legion then had a year to fulfill the conditions. And with regard to the parcel that we're looking at today, they have decided to proceed to fulfill those conditions, and the property will be changing hands in the next month or so to Oxnard Development. So Oxnard has applied on the Legion's behalf, essentially, but will be taking over carriage of the application, if I can put it that way. The parcel to the north, the approved severance, the Legion does not want to carry forward with, and the Region Land Division Committee has been advised of that. So even though they had provisional consensus called under the Planning Act, they will not be creating a separate parcel. So the lands to the north, fronting onto Bay Street, will continue to remain as one large property owned by the Legion. Save and except, as a condition of the very first severance, the one that we are proceeding with, the road widening that Ms. Knudsen talked about is proceeding. So when I say there's one large property fronting onto Bay, it's save and except the road widening that will be coming into the township's hands when the severance is perfected. So with that clarification, I'm here to answer any questions that you might have.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Jordan. Are there any questions for Mr. Jordan? Councillor Back?
Thank you, through the chair, and I don't know if you can answer this for me or not. So if the north portion of land is not going to be sold, at least at this time, one could assume then that that would still be operated as an unofficial private park?
Madam Chair, I can't speak for the Legion, but I don't think they have any intention on making any changes to the way they carry on with the operation of the lands they will retain. So that includes that entire parcel. There's nothing in my client's discussions with them that would indicate they're interested in not continuing to provide that park space in that location.
Councillor Kett?
No, that's fine, thank you.
Any further question? Councillor Drew?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So would you contemplate having a walkway to access?
Through you,
I'll
Madam-
leave it with you.
Yeah, okay,
Thank you.
fair enough.
Wonderful. Councillor Beck?
Thank you, through the chair. If you do contemplate a walkway, I would respectfully request that it does not occur on either side of where the existing homes are, that it would be in the middle of the lots, so that, because I wouldn't want a pathway by my house. So I would think if that's the case, it should be buyer beware, so to speak, and if you have a plan of subdivision and you know there's a walkway up the middle, that's fine, but I don't think it's fair for either of those homeowners on either side to have a walkway.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to this application? If so, please proceed to the microphone and, just like the previous, state your name and municipal address. And I will ask you to come forward up here.
Hello, my name is Sarah St. Pierre. I live at 437 Bay Street in Port Perry. So I am actually very pleased to hear that the Legion is going to be holding on to the north part of their land at the moment. There are a lot of children in the neighborhood, and I know the park is well used. I hope if they wish to sell the land in the future that the township would consider purchasing a part for a park there, because there are no other parks in the area that are easily walked to. Regarding the development on Balsam, there is currently, the land does drain towards Balsam, so there's often a low, soggy area in the southeast part of that current open land. So that would have to be addressed, because I think if houses were put all the way along there, there would be a significant drainage problem. Also, in regards to sidewalks, there are currently no sidewalks on Balsam, on the north or the south. And I would like, and the road there is also in fairly bad shape, so that would need to be addressed if there's a lot more traffic on that road. I'm okay. I live in a semi-detached house myself. My lot size is significantly larger than these semi-detached houses. When I first saw this, I thought, good grief, where are they going to put the house? Assuming the parking's going to have to be directly in front of the house, with no or little front yard. These are small. My house isn't big. These are a lot smaller. I would appreciate a walkway into that. I know it's a private park, but it's well used by the community. I know the baseball diamond is used by Little Leagues and high school. Some of the gym classes come and use the baseball diamond there. So I guess that's up to the developer where a walkway would get put, but it would be good to have access from Balsam towards the park. So those, I guess, are my comments. And I, again, am pleased that the Legion is retaining ownership of the north part of the land.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak to this application? Please come forward. Now we have a race. Bonnie wins. Bonnie wins.
Bonnie won. I'm Bonnie Solomon, and I live at 497 Balsam. Some of these questions will be directed probably to the developer. Just from sitting in from the last meeting, I have a question as to how deep those driveways would be. Because Balsam is not a street that you can have extra parking on, not on the side of the street. As our previous speaker said, there are no sidewalks, absolutely none. We have people that have lived on that street for 43 years. For 43 years, the road is going to be repaired. It is like walking on the back of a crocodile. It is horrendous. It is horrendous. So, does the developer fix that road when he's doing that, when they're building?
Director Heritage, are you aware if there is a requirement for the developer to make repairs to a road?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the resident, we will, as part of reviewing the development application, be requiring the developer to pay for the upgrading of the road on the north side of the road, their portion of it.
Okay, on the north side of the road, so what happens on the south side of the road?
We can also ask the developer to contribute to that as well, but the township will have to look at that as well as part of the review of the application.
That to me just sounds bizarre. I'm sorry, like you're only going to fix the north side of the street and you're not going to do the south side of the street? I think that should be part of the Scugog Townships. It's been 43 years they've been going to fix that road. So now's an opportunity when you're going to have development and you're going to have sewers going in and water going in and gas going in. Why would you not fix the whole road? No answer?
Through you, Madam Chair, the township would certainly be looking at an upgrade to the entire road. We wouldn't be looking at upgrading only half the road and leaving the other half.
Just wanted to know.
Can I just add that we hear the comment about the quality of the road, about the servicing going in, and that's a consideration before the recommendation report is prepared, but by no means does staff have answers to all the questions tonight. That's the purpose of this meeting, to hear the questions, research them, and come back with appropriate answers for council and the residents. So we hear the comment and we'll take it into consideration.
Okay, so does anyone have an answer as of yet as to how deep those driveways would be on a semi?
Director Heritage, sorry, did you know?
Through you, Madam Chair, the bylaw requirement for the depth of the driveway is currently 6 meters to accommodate one car length.
Okay, and if that family has more than one car, where is that car to go?
Through you, Madam Chair, a garage will be provided. The bylaw requires a minimum of 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit.
If the houses, I don't have a problem with houses going on our Balsam Street. When I moved there 8 years ago, I was told that that area to the east of me would always be a green space. And that was fine with me. I don't begrudge there being building, but I think the number is far too many. 18 semis on that property, when over on Bay Street, there is only 16 semis, which is exactly 1 block away, that are 2-story and have bigger lots and don't go as long as that one. So I don't understand how they can put 18 there. And does anyone know the square footage of these houses?
I'm not sure if that would, if it's preliminary to know the square footage right now.
I just think that the council should consider that the number of houses that they're proposing there is far more than what probably could go in there. Again, with the traffic, it's a lot of cars, and if there's only the one parking spot plus a garage, unless people are better planners than I am, and the man that I live with, there will hardly ever be a car in that garage. So, I just want to know, where's the other car going? And if it's out on Balsam Street is not wide enough to have two-way traffic and a car parked on the side of the road. And if that cars are parked on that side of the road, I would like to think that the municipality will enforce that those cars will be tagged and moved. I thank you for your time, and wish everybody good luck.
Thank you. All right, you better hurry.
My name is George Bray. I live at 427 Balsam. I'm in one of the two houses on the, I guess, the northeast edge. So the two houses are there are the same. If I could just comment on the drainage situation. The drainage in the summer is tolerable. It's the winter, when there's a thaw, that it's the worst. My neighbor, who is immediately west of me, the first house, between he and I, we clear the drains or the culverts from the front of our houses all the way around onto Rosa and over to Bay to make sure the water drains, because in the winter it's frozen, so all the water is going through there. So his house is most susceptible. If possible, those trees along Balsam, if they could be protected or saved, existing neighbors would appreciate that. If it would be possible for council to consider leasing or owning that north parcel, that would be a way of preserving that land for the future. And if I could just reiterate what Bonnie said about the road, it's in terrible shape.
Thank you. Are there any further? Okay, now we have another race. We should start betting on these.
Thank you very much. My name is Mark Gibbons. I'm resident of 245 Bigelow Street in Ward 5. I have a few questions and some concerns and comments I wanted to share with council. The first, on the notice of statutory meeting that was released on the website, there was mention that the current zoning was recreational and that we were amending that, or that we were going to remove the recreational zoning. And in the notes here, the staff report, there's no mention of that, so I wanted some clarification on that zoning.
Ms. Knutson or Director Heritage?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the deputant. Part of the property that extends down from the private playground is zoned recreational, so it will be included in this application for rezoning. And there is a portion of the RM4-1 zone that extends north of the proposal for the 18 homes, which will still remain part of the Legion lands, will need to be rezoned to community facility from RM4-1, so that the Legion's lands are don't have a double zone with respect to residential use that's no longer required.
So is the recreational zoning remaining on the existing parcel that's not for application?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Now to my comments. First concern is with regards to our master plan and the stipulation about maintaining and enhancing the character of our existing neighborhoods. I'm a little bit concerned about the volume of units being proposed, given the fact that across the street, we're talking about single-family detached dwellings with bungalows, and it seems very much out of place to put that much density on that parcel. There was mention, the gentleman earlier, about the trees. There are some very nice mature trees on that street, and I think it'd be very important for council to ensure that they be protected as part of contemplation of development. I'm a little concerned with the mention of road widening and the development charges, which are $11,000 per unit. So if we're raising about $200,000, is that enough to cover our cost of road widening, sidewalks? And as mentioned, and as some of you who've participated in the Terry Fox run on I guess yesterday, that road is in third world condition, and as you may have noticed, some seniors and children tripping on the potholes. And there's concern there about construction vehicles further damaging the road, and, who's footing the bill for that. We've got a tremendous amount of development happening right now in Port Perry on Old Simcoe, Canterbury Commons, and much of that is coming to the expense of existing homeowners. Some people like us who have been, in 150-year-old homes, and seeing our residential street turn into collectors and freeways for cut-through traffic, and street widening is concerning to me. And then finally, the 8.5 frontage, to me, is curious, because I would love to sever my lot on Paxton Street and go in with my neighbor, and on every other street on the same sort of, if you follow along, there are 4 homes, and on ours there's only 2, and we were told that we needed 7.5 meters of setback from the NFR properties to build another home. So I think it's ridiculous that we're allowing 8.5 meter frontages on an established street, and it doesn't fit at all with the the character of the neighborhood. That's it.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Can we get Director Heritage to answer some of those questions?
The majority of the questions are going to be addressed in the staff report that's coming back to council. Is there something specific? Actually, you know what, Councillor Kett,
that's fine.
I will be asking if there's any further questions after we've let the public speak. Hi.
Hi, my name is Astrid Anker. I'm at 444 Balsam Street, directly across Balsam from the designated property that we're discussing. Basically, corroborating with my neighbors who are here, who have spoken, the properties that we have, there are 11 homes on that section of Balsam Street, and now you want to put on 18 more. You're effectively tripling the traffic on the existing broken road. Even the buses don't come down Balsam Street anymore. They have diverted for whatever reason. I'm surprised that you haven't had any snowplow repairs from the damage to hitting all the rocks and things that are coming through our street. So my concern also comes down to traffic. By tripling the residences on that street, we've also have, as stated, all the development on Old Simcoe, where we've got some more streets coming out. We will never get out of Balsam Street. My husband often sits there for an awfully long time just trying to get onto Old Simcoe so that he can get to work. So what is going to, be done about the traffic in that whole area? Drainage, I've seen the swamp that develops every spring at the foot of, across the street from my driveway, right by the mailboxes, as residents try to trip and get their mail through the piles of ice that back up there. George's basement's going to become our local swimming pool if this continues, and his neighbor as well, so maybe we'll meet you there for swimming. I have my doubts whether those trees will stand. I'm sure the developer is going to say that that's going to be right in the middle of his house because they are set that far back from the road. So what will be considered about that? And question comes back where we're talking about the road widening at Chimney Hill. That's at the front of the Legion, Bay Street becoming a 4th Street. Is that the street that you're talking about widening, or are we widening Balsam Street as well? I'm not sure on where that was going.
I'll quickly jump in there. I believe it would be in both aspects. So at Bay, the township is securing a portion of the property to allow for the widening and the...
Four-way stop there.
Four-way stop, and then Balsam Street will also...
Also get widened.
But I'll ask Diane Knutson to nod her head if that's correct.
Through you, Madam Chair, it really is a question more for the Director of Public Works. I don't know if Balsam Street will be widened. It will be upgraded to a proper urban section. That's my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
What does that mean? Sorry. What does an urban section mean?
Curbs and gutter. Curbs and gutter and pavement.
So no more ditches? Okay. All right, thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak to this application? Oh, you don't have anyone racing against you. You can take your time.
Good evening, council. My name is Glenn McCoy. I am an executive of the branch. I'm here with our president, Barb Dope. Thank you. And basically, I don't want to speak to any of the comments that have been going on. I would like to simply express our support and talk a little bit maybe about the process that we got to have this purchaser work with us. We support the project, obviously. Seems a little obvious. We spent some time talking on the content of it, though. We had several purchasers interested in this project. None of them were offering low-income housing or subsidized housing or however that process is supposed to come about. Some of them offered much higher density that some people think is a useful activity for this project. I don't really have a big comment on it. Some of them had smaller density with bigger homes, different stuff. Within our 400 members and the executive, essentially, we worked our way through a bit of an analysis, and all the offers had more or less the same kind of opportunity for us, and thought that this purchaser, developer, put together probably one of the plans that might be able to be in the middle of all of the different interests. 18, 24, 16, 12, I'm sure that'll be all for all of you people and experts to figure out. I'd like to remind you that that park, that property for roughly 60 years has been maintained by 419, grass cutting, tree maintenance, the baseball parkette, whatever. We want this to be part of the community. There was one thing said here that maybe got mixed up a little bit, and I don't have a lawyer with us tonight because I wasn't expecting to deal with this. But about there was a severance application and this and that combined with the north property and the south property. Somehow that was done, I think, at the beginning, like 2 years ago almost. And it was sort of done to make the applications work together, but at no point, and I assure you, at no point, zero, has there been any agreement with Oxnard about that north property, on what's to be on that north property. We own that north property. We expect to continue to be part of the parkland of that area, and be there a pathway or not, that park will be there, and people might even have to walk around to get some extra exercise while they're doing it. I'm not sure about that one, as a logical step. If you have some questions, I'd be happy to do that. Otherwise, thank you for your time.
May I just ask for your municipal address, please?
I wrote it down so I didn't forget it, you know. 1513 Old Simcoe, Port Perry, Ontario.
Thank you. Councillor Catt, did you have questions that you wanted to address now?
No, I'm fine with that.
Wonderful. Are there any other questions, Councillor Back?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So if I hear somewhat urbanization of the street with curbs and gutters, Would that then be curbs and gutters all the way to Rosa and ideally on both sides of the street? And would that cost be the developers?
That's something that we'll have to look at through you, Madam Chair, that in the absence of the Director of Public Works and in the absence of any engineered drawings that we will expect later on. So I can't comment on that tonight.
May I ask that it gets recorded, though, that that is a consideration, because we don't want to have our residents having to be doing culvert maintenance in the winter. That's sort of silly, and if we're going to have 18 new homes, we can be assured that those culverts are going to be plugged quicker. With regards to the trees, will there be sidewalks? Do you know if there's sidewalks proposed on this development?
Through you, Madam Chair, we're not sure at that point where we are right now for this information meeting. That is information that will come forward at least during the deliberations after this meeting and before the recommendation report comes through.
May I ask our CAO, if we're going to be doing infilling into existing neighborhoods like this with, as I concur, I don't even call it a road, it's just, I don't know what you call it, but it's one that you don't want to go down if you can avoid it. It's unfortunate for the people living on it, but when we're doing infilling and intensification, which is the buzzword of the province, should we not be part of the discussion when we get even to this part with the developer, that if there is no sidewalk and we have a terrible road and it's not very wide, that they install a sidewalk on that side, and so from Old Simcoe to Rosa, so at least, you know, if you're going to infill and you're going to be putting all these potentially obstacles in the existing neighborhood, it would be nice for them to have some upgrades that help the neighborhood be more livable.
Yeah, thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Yes, and I just want to assure council and those present tonight that we will coordinate our capital works with proposed development. So there shouldn't be a concern that we're not looking at Balsam Street in the context of this development. We will. And I just want to also just speak briefly, a lot of questions have been asked tonight, and I know staff and the consultant have not had a lot of answers. And that's because under the Planning Act, staff are obligated to bring this application forward, and this is the opportunity solely to hear concerns or comments from the neighborhood, from the public. The detailed work on this application commences after tonight. And then be assured that you will be notified of the subsequent meeting when the details and the response to your comments are brought forward. And that won't be until the new year. I can tell you it will be with the newly elected council in the new year, a time I'm not sure of at this point. But there's still a lot of work to be done in this application, and the previous one. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from council? Lovely. So I am going to thank you for attending and providing your input into the statutory public meeting. This now concludes this portion of the meeting. And like I did with the other one, I would like to bring forward the report so that we can finalize all of this. Right now, for Dev 2018-31, I have it moved by Councillor Somerville, seconded by Councillor Drew. Are there any questions on the report supporting this application? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. I am now going to call a very brief 7-minute recess. Thank you. Go on. Thank you. We would like to resume now with 10.1. Mr. Vitoli, you have a presentation that you would like, let me just get this here. Whenever you're ready, if you would like to start your presentation.
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Deputy Mayor and Council. As you're aware, the federal legislation of cannabis has required all municipalities to review local policies regarding how this crop is cultivated, sold, and consumed. Staff, through consultation with NHBC consultants, has reviewed the existing land use policies, including the township's official plan, zoning bylaw 1414, as well as the site plan control and development charges bylaws, to identify how these policies direct and govern cannabis, as well as forecast any potential issues moving forward. To this end, I will provide a brief overview of current conditions that are outlined in the background reports that are currently before council. I'll then turn things over to Jamie Robinson of NHBC Consultants, who will provide a presentation pertaining to technical issues, as well as discuss possible amendments moving forward. I feel it's important to note at this time that no amendments are being proposed. The background report and this presentation are simply to serve as a primer moving forward. Draft amendments will be forwarded to council for review and consideration in early 2019, prior to staff conducting a public open house. These amendments will also be circulated to all external agencies for their review. As Jamie will be speaking to the technical issues, I will mainly be sticking to the how we got here and what here is. Please bear in mind that the background reports prepared to investigate cannabis production and cultivation. As such, this report and ultimately this presentation focus on how township will deal with cannabis production facilities moving forward. So where these sites should be located and where we feel it's appropriate. So legislation that currently permits cannabis production has changed tremendously over the past recent years. Previously, under the Marijuana for Medical Purposes regulation, only producers licensed by the federal government, that's to say Health Canada, were permitted to grow cannabis. These regulations were subsequently replaced in August of 2016 by the Access to Cannabis for Medical Purposes regulations, which both updated these associated policies as well as allowed private individuals to grow cannabis. So what was essentially done was we created licensed producers who were federally evaluated for approval, and we created 6 licenses from Health Canada, and each license had, I guess, subcategories in terms of that, I guess, in broadest terms, dictated the amount that they were able to grow. Currently, the only role the township has in regards to licensees is that potential applicants are just required to provide written notice to municipalities. They're also required to provide this written notice to the local fire department as well as the local police department. So this establishes essentially who is allowed to grow, which is only really one half of the equation. What we're here to really discuss is where you should be allowed to go or grow. In 2018, staff retained NHBC to prepare a background report reviewing options to regulate legal cannabis growing facilities within the township, which, in addition to the staff's report, is in front of you now. Currently, policies found within the official plan and zoning bylaw offer no direct or specific regulations pertaining to cannabis cultivation. At the present time, staff considers cannabis production as an agricultural use and is therefore allowed to be cultivated in all zones where such a use is currently permitted. Consequently, under the current system, a cannabis production facility would not necessitate any additional regulatory review in this regard. This is obviously something we're looking to address for reasons I'm sure Jamie will discuss moving forward, but at the very least to ensure that the township is more involved in the process. Cannabis facilities have the potential to create a number of jobs in the community. Employment levels generated by these uses are anticipated to be consistent with projected employment levels for the designated employment area of the Port Perry industrial area, thus making cannabis facilities an appropriate use for the land use within the employment areas. Also note in the staff report is how cannabis retail will be addressed moving forward. That's kind of the third portion of that equation. Who's allowed to grow, where is allowed to grow, and ultimately where is allowed to be sold. Once again, this is something that has drastically changed over recent years. In October of 2017, the province wrote to all municipalities in Ontario to outline the process for identifying potential cannabis retail locations. This was the LCBO model, where it would be run provincially, with changes at the provincial level. This was recently changed to be directed more at, exclusively in the private sector. Along with this shift of provincial government, we also provide municipalities with a one-time window on which they may choose to opt out and permitting cannabis retail stores within their boundaries. Cannabis would still be sold online, but there would not be, brick and mortar stores. The province is yet to determine the start and end dates for this opt-out period. but as indicated, the timeframe will be confirmed prior to the end of the municipal elections. At this time, there is insufficient information regarding the applications either prohibiting or permitting private retail cannabis stores. Staff will continue to monitor the situation and forward a recommendation report to council for review and consideration early in the new year. So just before I hand things over, I just want to reiterate that the forthcoming commercial legalization of cannabis, coupled with the township's inherent agricultural nature, the future proliferation of these uses to be expected, requiring changes to the township's current land use policies and procedures to ensure that appropriate regulatory review standards from the township's perspective are in place moving forward. Thank you, Ms. Deputy Mayor, and that concludes my presentation. I'd now like to turn over to Jeannie Robson, who will further discuss the existing township land use policies.
Thank you, Mr. Vertoli. It's all yours.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll be fairly brief. Rob has gone over most of the key highlights. So what the purpose of the report was to do is not to specifically look at the retail component and what the township should do on that, but focused on the growing facilities. There was research done on what other municipalities are doing. Basically, why are we here? It's a new industry and something that wasn't contemplated when the planning documents were prepared for the municipalities. So when the official plan and the zoning bylaw were put together, and the site plan control bylaw and even development charges bylaw, this notion of a cannabis growing facility did not exist. And what we're looking at it here is not whether we agree or disagree, but what are the land use planning impacts and where should they potentially be located in the municipality. So that's really what the focus of the review is about. And ultimately addressing land use compatibility issues to ensure that where these operations occur, that ultimately it's compatible with the land uses that are in the area or even planned for the area. So what does the use of a cannabis growing facility entail? As Rob mentioned, the principal component of the use is considered to be agricultural in nature. It's the growing of the cannabis. But what goes along with it are components of a use that we often see that are associated with an industrial use. It's the warehousing, shipping, receiving, processing, lab testing, those sorts of other components. But in these facilities, those are generally an accessory component to that main use, which is the growing or the production. So how these uses are typically treated in other municipalities are that often in an urban municipality, these would be located in employment areas and be considered an employment type use. It's agricultural. There's an agricultural component to it, obviously, and in rural areas or agricultural areas, it's considered cultural use. So it's considered differently in different areas. But what we have to consider from a land use planning perspective are some of the implications associated if these facilities occur in employment areas. What does that do to the supply of employment area? Is it a good use of employment area land, given the number of jobs that are created, or is this in fact something you want to see in your employment areas and not in agricultural areas? So those are some of the considerations from a land use planning perspective. Some of the specific planning considerations relate to the odor, the traffic associated with it. Security, it's not really a municipal consideration. There's Health Canada requirements about the security associated with these facilities, but it is something through site plan control that we're aware, that we can be made aware of, and the security designs would be included in any sort of site plan control agreement. We have to consider how wastewater is dealt with, because there is water produced, there is water used on these facilities and produced, and where the water comes from that supplies these facilities as well. So those are some of the key planning considerations. So currently, as I mentioned, your current official plan has no policies related to specifically to cannabis facilities. It does have policies that relate to agricultural uses. So any application that's proposed right now would be considered under the current framework of the planning documents. So we think it's appropriate that the documents be updated to reflect this new use, and there be some policies included to evaluate in the official plan any future applications for zoning bylaw amendment to allow for these uses in specific area. I would consider the policies that get added, they'd be probably criteria-based policies, such that a zoning amendment to allow the proposed use might be permitted in a certain area, provided specific requirements are met. That's the option that I think would probably go forward, or that we'd probably likely recommend. I don't know what those specific criteria are yet, but that's sort of what I'm envisioning from a policy perspective on what might occur. From a zoning perspective, there's currently, as I mentioned, it would fall under the definition of an agricultural use in your zoning bylaw, but there's, what we've seen in other municipalities is they're actually establishing definitions and then specific locations or zones where this use is, where the cannabis growing facility use is permitted. And that's something that I would envision might proceed forward in this municipality. You might identify some as-of-right permission, some areas where they might not need a zoning bylaw amendment to establish this use. Or you might take the approach that the use isn't permitted in any zone and define it, and any application would require a zoning bylaw amendment to move forward. So those are some options to consider. I don't know which one to recommend yet to you, but this is to seek direction to prepare some amendments for consideration to council going forward. If you want to flip to the next one. No, go back. There we go. So site plan control bylaw, again, the reason why this is important is because there's many site plan control issues that are associated with a facility depending on its size, delivery, receiving, employee traffic, those sorts of site plan matters, and also could be septic systems and locations and those sorts of things that can be detailed through site plan control. Currently, your site plan control bylaw, it exempts agricultural uses, and because this would be considered an agricultural use, you could in theory have a very large cannabis production facility that is not subject to site plan control, when other similar type industrial facilities with similar massing and size would be subject to site plan control. So we think it would be appropriate to amend your site plan control bylaw to capture these sorts of facilities as well. Because although they're an agricultural use, they often have a different sort of operating procedure to what you would typically find as an agricultural use in the area. They aren't dissimilar to greenhouse operations, however, in terms of the use and the impacts associated with those facilities. There are obviously some security implications and some different measures that are in place, but from a traffic and a land use planning perspective, a number of those considerations are similar to what you might expect from a greenhouse in Niagara-on-the-Lake, for example. And then the final consideration is updating the development charges bylaw. Development charge bylaw currently exempts agricultural buildings as well, so there's a consideration on whether development charges should apply to these facilities, and then what should the development charge be associated with these. Currently, industrial buildings do have a development charge associated with them, but agricultural buildings don't. So that's something that I think is an important consideration for council, that these facilities do use services in the municipality, and other businesses are required to pay development charges as well, that it would likely be appropriate for a council to at least consider whether development charges should be imposed on these types of uses. So just in terms of a summary, what this background report recommends, based on what other municipalities are doing and based on the fact that this is a new land use that wasn't considered, is that this municipality should be considering some modifications and some amendments to the official plan, some updates to the zoning bylaw, to the site plan control bylaw, and then also potentially the development charge bylaw, to consider how best to plan for these uses that we expect more of to occur. As Rob alluded to at the start, cannabis has been legal for medical purposes, but when it's legalized in October for recreational purposes, the market's going to expand significantly, and there's going to be additional demand for these facilities. There may happen to be someone apply to build a significant facility in the municipality, and it's appropriate that you're ready for that. So that's a bit of an overview of the report and sort of the history and the planning reasons on why it's appropriate to look at this new land use. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Are there any questions on the presentation? Councillor Kett?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Did council approve this study?
I'll ask the CAO.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure quite what you mean by council approving the study. However, this was discussed with the Economic Development and Tourism Committee, and we, at the staff level, are receiving a lot of interest in the establishment of marijuana facilities within the township. And as mentioned, we do not have a manner to regulate those establishments. Currently permitted in the agricultural zone, and that's it. And what this background report does is we're seeking council's approval to move to actually establish those policies, those regulations, the site plan control, the meat of what we're talking about. Currently, as mentioned, a very, very large cannabis facility could locate in the agricultural zone without regard to traffic, sensitive land uses, smell, etc., because there's no site plan control and it's just broadly permitted in the community. This is really a proactive approach to take advantage of the economic benefits of this emerging industry and protect the residents in the township at the same time.
So that's,
Excuse me. Thank
so
you.
that's no, we didn't approve it.
Well,
Okay. No, that's good.
No, I want to clarify if I could, Madam Chair. I did not say no, you didn't approve it. This was not a need for council to approve it. This is the point for council to give approval or not. And if you do not wish to approve it, tell us.
Do you have any further questions?
Yeah, I've got quite a few questions, but I was just asking about the study, not, anyways. So what I'm gathering here is that we've got agricultural zoning where it's approved, and they've got the ability to put up greenhouses wherever they want. And they can grow it right now, and we just want to control it.
Yeah, well, to a certain extent, they still require the license from the federal government, Health Canada.
No, I understand that. I'm just saying, as far as we go, if a fellow has a greenhouse right now and he's growing poinsettias, and he decides he wants to grow some grass, he can do it.
That's correct, with the correct federal license,
You know, being part of the Greenbelt, our agricultural is a big part of it, right? So, that's what I'm doing. So, I would be more interested in the study if it even dealt with processing, because you're not allowed to have processing on the same property.
So, small-scale labs associated with cannabis cultivation are considered an accessory use on agricultural, environmental, and recreational sites or zones.
But it's against the law to have them on the same site. You can't produce and process on the same site.
There are licenses that do allow it. You have to have both. There is a cultivation license as well as a processing and testing license. So we're finding that certain proponents will specialize in just one, and others will have both on site. It's up to...
I'm sure you should check into that, because they're not allowed to be on the same property. I just have a hard time with us trying to tell people what they can grow. Well, we're not going to tell them to grow corn or vegetables, but we can tell them we can grow that. But I would be interested in processing, because the processing does use a lot of water and does use a lot of chemicals in that, because that's sort of the big deal with the fire departments, right? To make sure that everything's looked after properly, right? But as far as where it's grown, like, I mean, somebody can go out and grow it in their field, and there's lots of grow-ops now that are 400 plants out in the field. But I'm just wondering, like, is there a need to put rules on everything?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, I think the key consideration here is that it's been identified that the land use planning impacts associated with we'll call it cannabis growing facility, have been identified to be different than what might exist for another agricultural use that's permitted as of right. And even whether it's a greenhouse that grows cucumbers or one that grows tomatoes, we're not this review isn't dictating what someone can or cannot grow, but it's recognizing that there is a difference in land use compatibility and potentially impacts and intensity of use associated with a cannabis growing facility as opposed to some other agricultural use. So it recognizes that it's appropriate then to separate those uses and not maybe provide the same set of rules for each one, but there's different considerations that have to be had when these more intense uses come to a community. It's not dissimilar to the higher tests that are associated with a multi-unit residential development as opposed to a low-density residential development. They're both residential, but there's different impacts associated with each one. So.
Councillor Ken, any further questions?
No, that's good, thanks.
If I could just add, Madam Chair, the next step also looks at the processing piece, and, you know, where that should occur. Should that be in our employment lands? Is there a piece of that that could be part of the growing operation, and such?
And I agree with that, so, that processing should be in an industrial, area or, but.
Councillor Watton?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First off, who defines it as agricultural? Is that the municipality, or is that the federal, or who has defined it as agricultural? And based on that, if we go through all this process and yet it's defined by the federal government, what controls do we really ultimately have, even if we go through this entire process?
Through you, Deputy Mayor. First off, dealing with the definition component of it, and what we're dealing with today are the land use planning documents that are enacted under the Planning Act, and the definition comes down to your zoning bylaw, and the zoning bylaw defines an agricultural use to include the growing of crops, including nursery and horticultural crops, and then it goes on to say the raising of livestock, etc. So it's kind of a categorical definition, if you will. It's kind of an umbrella definition that encompasses all different types of agricultural components. So without having a specific cannabis definition in the plan, it falls under this bigger umbrella. So that deals with the definition component of it. As in terms of the second part of your question, dealing with what role does the township have in comparison to Health Canada in terms of regulation? I think that's what it was. Health Canada deals with issuing the licenses for operators to be able to conduct these growing facilities. In terms of the township responsibility, it's really dealing with the land use component of it, and does it fit into the planning documents that the township has. So, and my understanding is it's a bit of a cart before the horse item, is that these licenses, in order for Health Canada to issue a license, the operators need to provide evidence that the correct zoning is in place for the use to occur. So they have to receive the proper zoning before they can move forward and get that license from Health Canada.
But we have a lot of property that is zoned so we don't regulate that then. It's already zoned agricultural, so anyone can grow what they wish there, correct?
Yes, through you, Deputy Mayor, that's correct. So currently, any agriculturally zoned lot as of right could apply for a commercial grow facility. And like the question is that's under the current regime. is that appropriate, or should there be some limitations, and should you have to meet certain locational criteria in order to be eligible to have that as an as-of-right use, or even through a zoning bylaw amendment? So that's really the crux of the matter here, and we tend to think, as planners, that there's probably some locations in the municipality that these shouldn't be allowed as of right, that if they're allowed to occur as of right, there'd be compatibility issues with neighboring property owners.
Can you give me an example?
I can't give you any specific examples, but again, we did identify the potential traffic concerns, odor, those different sorts of impacts, separation distance, because these are large buildings and in proximity to residential dwellings, that there could be an impact on the character of the landscape, and those are all things that we consider from a planning perspective, so.
Also, site plan control will also take into account the elevations of the building, how the building itself actually looks. There is criteria in terms of building materials used, how those buildings look. Currently, an agricultural structure would be exempt from that, so we would have no control over that.
My point exactly. If it's agricultural and you're building a facility, who and how can that be really regulated at this point? And can we realistically be putting in those rules?
The point's well taken. It can't be regulated right now, and that's the purpose for this discussion, is whether it should be regulated. And many municipalities in the province are undergoing the exercise, or have already undergone the exercise of including regulations in their bylaw and policies in their official plan and site plan control provisions to apply to these sorts of facilities.
But to Councillor Kett's point, are we really able to put these rules in place? Like, can we, as a municipality, dictate what an agricultural building, what they grow, all those things? Can we, even if we put all these rules in, it's too early to know what the repercussions will be if it's contested?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, in terms of your ability of can you do it or not, yes, you can. You have the power under Section 34 of the Planning Act, which is the section in zoning bylaws, to regulate the use of land. That's one of the first items in Section 34, is to be able to regulate the use of land. And as I mentioned, right now the approach is that the agricultural use is kind of categorical in nature, and you do have the ability to refine it under the Planning Act. So there is the opportunity. It's whether or not you want to do it or not.
And the history of several other things such as solar farms, wind turbines, and all these things that we've tried to not have, but then they came anyway.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, those two examples, or those green energy examples you've provided, those are specifically listed in the Planning Act as items that municipalities can't regulate. So this is one that we can, so that's right.
Councillor Back?
Thank you. So if we're at this sort of infancy state, may I humbly suggest that we create a new category for zoning, not agricultural, not employment, that it is actually strictly cannabis related, because I look at this and say, I've noticed around our township that there looks like there's a site that's really on a busy road that looks like it's in the midst of being built, and I don't know if the township's aware of it or not, and if traffic with regards to employment and who knows customers, I don't know how these facilities work, that's going to cause an issue. But with a new category, it also evens the playing field, because why would you even consider growing, even in a greenhouse, in an employment land, when your zoning is employment land? Your taxation is different than if you're on an agricultural. You're right away putting that business at a disadvantage tax-related, because am I not correct that employment lands would pay more than an agricultural zoning? Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assumption, and there have been businesses that do operate these facilities on employment lands, and there are ones that operate on agricultural lands, but that's to the business owner, so I won't comment any further on that.
I think
Point taken.
I think in all due fairness, it should be in its own category for a lot of reasons. Now, with regard to site plan control, does that also apply then, will you be looking at the fill bylaw? Like, are these grown in the ground open field, or are they in a greenhouse, or are they in a large square facility? I don't know, I don't use the product, so I have no interest in it.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, the typical situation is they're growing in a building. It could be a greenhouse, it could be a building that's like a greenhouse, but they're generally potted. It's a very secure environment, both from a security perspective, but then from a health perspective as well. There's very stringent Health Canada regulations associated with them, but I don't see a link between this and the fill bylaw.
Okay, so where is that soil that, are these, I don't understand this industry, so are they grown hydroponically with no soil, or they have soil? And if the soil comes in, what kind of soil is that? Not that you're an expert either.
I'm certainly not an expert, but in terms of the business operation component, where the soil comes from, I don't know. I'm sure they have their sources for certain soil types, and I'm sure there's very stringent requirements associated with them, but they do use soil.
Okay, and then on page 57 or 7 of 8, I don't know which numbers we abide by, I think that one-time window for the province is one that we really should be, well, I guess it's the new council, so they can have the fun with this, but thinking about cannabis retail stores within their boundaries. I know that there are municipalities, larger municipalities, that have already said no to this. Where's the support? I see for the region that they support economic development, but I don't see anything, and sort of disappointing for the region to not have any comments about policing, increasing policing, because if you have a cannabis store, we're going to have all sorts of fun. We're going to have possible break-and-enters into that retail store, who knows, on crime increase, petty theft, and then also impaired driving. So I think that the region really needs to step up with regards to this and let a municipality know what they're going to offer in terms of increased funding and officers in our township if we were to consider having retail, because you don't want to be playing catch-up, and we don't have enough officers as is, so we need to ensure that our area of our township, if we were to have this, has proper...
Councilor Back, is there a question?
Yes, is the region going to step up and comment on this? Because all I see is Region of Durham strongly supports economic development. I don't see anything with regards to DRPS.
So right now, just to remind council, we're just on the presentation. I haven't brought the report forward yet. So if we have any questions on the presentation, then I will bring the report forward as soon as we're done receiving the presentation. Any further questions on the presentation? Councillor Somerville.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, it does say on page 53 that the region does not have a specific policy yet on that, Councillor Back, so we'll just wait for that to happen. I think they'll get that pulled together. And that's what makes it so difficult for us, is because if they haven't got their policy put together, how are we going to put a policy together? Because this is like putting the cart before the horse. Their policy could be a lot different than what our policy is, and then we have to change everything back around again. Do you know when the region are going to put a policy together, or have they said anything at all?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, I'm not sure about the timing with respect to the region and when they intend to look at it. The only comment I would make is that it's the local tier that's responsible for land use planning, for zoning applications, and for issuing building permits and specific uses of land. That's not a responsibility of the region. So, in terms of evaluating the appropriate location for these items from an as-of-right perspective, that falls with the township and not with the region. So I do think there is some, I don't want to use urgency, but some need for the municipality to consider this in the interim before an application comes in for one of these and we're not prepared for it. So.
I just have, and help me understand this. If I have a farm and I have an empty building or a greenhouse, do I apply to the township or do I apply to Health Canada for an application? And then do they come out and survey what I've got as far as the facility is concerned, whether I've got enough water, I've got enough earth, I've got enough everything. Lighting is, I guess, a big thing, and heat. Like, how do they work this? Can you just walk me through that?
Certainly. I'm not sure I can walk you through the whole process.
I don't want the whole process. I want the process for what it would be like to have to live in this township, have a farm, and want to put this in, because I've got a lot of people who would like to, that do have a greenhouse and would like to grow up.
Yeah, so the application to Health Canada is an application that has to be made. I'm not sure of all of the specifics associated with it, but one of the components of the application is that you have to identify if you have correct zoning for the property in order to submit that application. So in this municipality, if you're on a farm on an agricultural lot, and agricultural zoning does permit this use, as we previously identified, so that component of the application could be completed by visiting the planning office. And then as far as the other components, I can't speak to specifically how Health Canada deals with their component of the application.
Okay, so we just make an application to you, and if it's agricultural land?
No, for the municipality, you would have to come in, just check the zoning on your property, confirm what the zoning is, and if the zoning allows for an agricultural use, then that portion of the application, that's the license application that's provided to Health Canada, is satisfied.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Any further questions for the presentation? Then I have it moved by Councillor Somerville. Can I have it seconded by Councillor Watton, that the presentation by Robert Vertoli, Planning Technician, and J.B. Robinson regarding the Cannabis Strategy Background Report be received? All those in favor? Carried. Now, if I can bring forward the report, I'm pretty sure we've covered the majority of the items that were in the report. I don't imagine that there's anything else you need to highlight from the report?
No.
No. Then I will ask members of council if there are any questions on the report. Okay, wonderful. So it's moved by Councillor Somerville, seconded by Councillor Drew, that report Dev 2018-33 Cannabis Strategy Background Report be received, that staff be authorized to prepare draft amendments to the Scugog Official Plan Zoning Bylaw 1414 and the Site Plan Control Bylaw to regulate design of cannabis production facilities, as well as draft language to be included in the new Development Charges Bylaw regarding a charge for cannabis production facilities, and that the draft amendments be forwarded to council for review and consideration in early 2019 prior to staff conducting a public open house. All those in favor? Carried. Lovely. What? All those in favor? Carried. Okay, moving on. 11.3, revisions to draft plan approval for subdivision SS 2004-01 Lalu Peninsula, vacant residential land on the south side of Castle Harbor Drive, east of Simcoe Street, Ward 5. Diane Knutson, Ms. Knutson, do you have a presentation or anything in the report you would like to highlight?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the only thing that we really need to highlight is that this is a draft plan approved subdivision that was draft plan approved back in 2007, and because of the provincial legislation, the Greenbelt Plan, et cetera, that came into play following the approval of the subdivision, Kawartha Conservation Authority, together with the township, wants to ensure that no new development occurs within the floodline of the Lake Scugog, or within the wetlands, the provincially significant wetland that's there. And there have been several meetings between KRCA and regional staff. Heather Finley is here from the region as well, and township staff, as to how we can get this development to proceed by amending some of the draft conditions to reflect the new legislative requirements under the Greenbelt Plan and other provincial policy statements. So the colored photo that you've got in your package, the flood line is the blue line, which is all the way around the subdivision and somewhat in between, and the green portion are the wetland compensation pockets that KRCA has agreed to make up for the land that is going to be developed. I've just colored the stormwater management pond is in orange right here. The zoning that is already in place already incorporates all of this land, so we don't have to further revise the zoning bylaw to accommodate this revision to the draft plan. Within the report, the Conservation Authority has suggested several conditions that will put this plan into place, and the township staff have reviewed that, and we are satisfied that this will meet all of our requirements. The lands that are zoned EP, which all of them will be, and the compensation pockets will be conveyed to the Township of Scugog so that there will be no development. We will be able to enforce no development on those lands. They will remain in natural state. And I think that pretty much covers it.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Councilor Back?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Knutson, can you please tell me what compensation packets mean? I don't quite understand that. What does that, we're giving land or getting land?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Back. I was able to find, although not on our Conservation Authority websites, but one, for sure, in Nova Scotia, the purpose of compensation. And the purpose of it is to create a healthy and sufficiently sized wetland to make up for the loss of habitat and the role the wetland played before being altered for development. So it can such things as draining, filling, flooding, or excavation. It also requires wetland to be restored, recreated, or enhanced elsewhere to balance any loss during the alteration process.
So does this mean that the 19 lots are going to be smaller?
Sorry, through you, Madam Chair, the developable area of the lots will be smaller, but they still meet the requirements of the zoning bylaw as well as the health department requirements.
So, forgive my ignorance here, but if you have a lot that now has an area that's considered a compensation package, does the Kawartha Conservation install a fence, or do they ensure that a fence is put there? Because, as we know, when people have a property, and it could have an invisible line of your property and where this compensation package is, and grading changes. So how do we know that if there's no barrier there to keep it wetland, that the owner of the home just fills it in or does something as they wish? How do we ensure that that stays?
Through you, Madam Chair, the part of the subdivision agreement already requires that these lands be separated by a page strand fence, a farm fence, so that it doesn't urbanize the area, and it will stop development from occurring. So they will not have access through that fence.
Is a farm fence one that you can put your head through and then your whole body?
Yeah, if they can walk through there, that's not an issue. It's development that we don't want to see occur in there.
Okay.
It will be public land.
And so, this doesn't infringe on the township's proposed trail systems?
Not at all.
Not at all, okay. And then there's still the same amount of homes are going to be the same?
That's correct, 20 lots.
Okay. And just because I know that there are some people that live in this neighborhood, when this gets approved, is there any timeline? Has there been discussion on when the fill is going to be coming, when the trucks are rolling, when this is going to actually start?
Through you, Madam Chair, the township is not aware of when this is going to occur. The subdivider, the developer, has requested that we move forward in preparing the subdivision agreement. They were planning on doing a site alteration permit, which has been issued for this purpose, but my understanding from their engineering consultant is that it's a lot cheaper for them to proceed through the subdivision agreement than through the site alteration bylaw.
Oh, just a second here. We had a public meeting with the residents. Does that mean that, and they said that they were going to be abiding by the fill bylaw. Is that still in place?
Yes, that process will remain in place. However, it is cheaper for them to proceed through the subdivision agreement. They don't have to pay for the topsoil that's coming in per truckload.
Explain that to me again, I'm sorry.
Developers have the choice to either alter the site through the site alteration permit prior to a subdivision agreement being entered into, or they can choose to wait and deal with the subdivision agreement and the securities that will be in place through that agreement. They don't have to have both, in other words.
But that fill that's coming in, thousands of trucks, are going to be monitored and tested?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kett?
Yes, I was under the impression they agreed to the fill permit.
They have, but they have since changed their minds.
Wow. They're allowed to do that?
Explain it.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, there are two options, as Ms. Knutson has already identified. A developer can proceed through a site alteration permit prior to entering into a subdivision agreement with the township. They have selected to proceed through the subdivision agreement instead and provide the appropriate securities and the requirements. The same requirements will be applied.
So, Director Heritage, what is the difference then? Why would a developer choose to do one way versus the other?
The site alteration permit costs more money typically than going through a site plan agreement.
But the same controls are in place?
Absolutely.
Okay. Councillor Kett, did you have any further questions?
Yes, I do. So, do they have a site plan agreement?
Through you, Madam Chair, no, it's a subdivision agreement, and they haven't executed a subdivision agreement as of yet.
So if they don't have it, and we don't give it to them, then...
The application has already been draft approved. It's in a draft approved plan of subdivision. And they have to fulfill a number of conditions. One of the conditions is entering into a subdivision agreement with the township.
I don't know how we got caught with that.
Mr. CAO, did you want to provide some details?
Through you, Madam Chair, maybe what's missing here is that fill can't be brought to the site until they enter into the subdivision agreement with the municipality, which will have the same controls, testing, security that would be through the other process. What Mr. Heritage was saying is that the site alteration bylaw is a process the municipality has where you want to go ahead of your development proposal, your subdivision agreement, your site plan, and then there's a way you can do that is through the site alteration bylaw or agreement. But if you want to do this when you do your development and bring the fill in as part of your development, then it's handled through that agreement with the municipality. And this case would be a subdivision agreement. Hope I explained that.
So are we saying that anything that's filled that is KRCA, are they agreeable to that?
Through you, Madam Chair, that's normal practice in developing land, in terms of entering into a subdivision agreement with the municipality.
What is standard?
In terms of entering into agreement with the subdivision agreement with the municipality, and those appropriate controls in terms of bringing fill onto the site are regulated through that agreement.
But it still has to be regulated through KRCA as well, if it's on their regulated area.
That's correct.
And are they okay? Because obviously you're filling on their regulated area. Because they'll have fees as well.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, they have agreed to this, and they will be involved with our subdivision agreement when we're preparing it to make sure that all of their concerns as well as ours are met.
Any other first-time questions? Okay, Councillor Back?
Thank you, and forgive me if I'm beating a dead horse here, but so if you go in a subdivision agreement, technicality by the whole definition of a subdivision agreement, you do not have to then do the fill bylaw, is that correct?
Through you, Madam Chair, that's correct. However, the requirements of the site alteration bylaw will be incorporated into the subdivision agreement, so that full control is going to be had.
So there's going to be absolutely, with no uncertainty, clear language in this particular subdivision agreement that they must abide by our fill bylaw, that goes with the testing, for them to be paying for the testing, independent testing, and all that goes by, because I would hate to see that this gets approved, and then, lo and behold, they're under the subdivision agreement definitions where they can then be exempt from the bylaw, the fill bylaw, because this will not be a good day if that happens. Is it clearly going to be in that subdivision agreement, or is it just a standard subdivision agreement with LALU?
Through you, Madam Chair, the site alteration bylaw is now being implemented into every subdivision agreement.
So you mean to tell me in Canterbury Common, they're going to have to abide by our fill bylaw?
Yes.
And when did this happen? Because I was not informed of that.
We will be doing it when we get to the subdivision agreement stage. We're not there yet. So the subdivision agreement is prepared through the planning department and/or our planning consultant together with our solicitors, and clauses relating to the site alteration bylaw are now being implemented into every new agreement we have, every new subdivision agreement.
And so so when this gets agreed on, before the trucks are rolled, is there going to be a plan in place for our testing and all of this?
Yes.
Okay.
Any further questions?
I just have a quick question, Madam Chair. With respect to the fencing, who puts the fencing up? Do they do that?
Through you, Madam Chair, it's the developer that will be putting up the fencing. It will be a requirement of the subdivision agreement.
Will there be one row, or will there be two rows? Just the one row of fencing?
I would expect there to be one row.
And so what happens? Can they put a gate in there and...
No.
They cannot...
That's correct.
They cannot go through that. So
they will be encroaching into township property.
So who's going to monitor this? How do you know they're not going to put a gate in there?
The same way that we found out they put gates up at Cockers Creek.
Who did that? Somebody patrolled? I don't know what happened there.
Yes. We received complaints from neighbors.
And you don't think that nobody's going to try to do something that's going to be...
Absolutely, they'll try to do it. If there's a fence there, they'll try and put a gate through it.
Sure they will. And they'll put a boat in the water. So, we all know that. Anyways, good luck. Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Okay, so we have a motion before us that report Dev 2018-32 revision of draft plan approval for subdivision SS 2004-01 La Lu Peninsula Inc., vacant residential land on the south side of Castle Harbor Drive, east of Simcoe Street, part lots 19 and 20, concession 7, Ward 5, information and recommendation report be received, and that the Region of Durham be advised that the township has no objection to the proposed revisions to the draft plan of subdivision, and that the report Dev 2018-32 be forwarded to the Region of Durham Planning Department as the township's comments on this matter. May I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Somerville, seconded by Councillor Drew. Any questions? All those in favor? Carried. Okay, we're getting there. All right, 11.5, building permit activity. Is there any report or discussion on this, Director Heritage?
No, Madam Chair, this is self-explanatory. It's comparing the first half of 2017 with the first half of 2018, and from what's outlined in the report, we're certainly further ahead at this point in time than we were in 17 in terms of construction values, number of units, and that type of thing. So
Perfect.
it's for council's information.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, I have it moved by Councillor Somerville. May I please have a seconder? Councillor Drew. All those in favor? Carried. Correspondence. We were getting down to section 12 now. Correspondence number 255-18 received from the Corporation of the Township of South Glengarry, providing a resolution made at a meeting held September 4th, 2018 regarding paramedic services in Ontario. May I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Kett, seconded by Councillor Watton. Are there any questions? Lovely. All those in favor? Carried. Whew. This is my favorite part of the evening. Yes, it is.
I have a couple things I want to bring up.
Councillor Kett, there's business on our agenda.
This isn't new business, I'd like to just bring it up. I've been approached by two separate constituents regarding the amount of money, $250,000 to $500,000 that's been spent on the ISP, and I'm wondering why we haven't had reports for all the MSCs brought to council, and why there's been no meetings.
Councillor Kett, I am in no position to answer that question. Is this something, clerk, that we do as we don't have notice of motion? As a notice of motion or a request?
That's a question I wanted to ask either the CAO or the clerk, who's ever in charge of the MSCs.
Sorry, Mr. Clerk. He can do what? Councillor Kett, you may bring forward a notice of motion if you like.
Okay, I'd have to craft up a motion that would, basically, I'd like to make, bring a notice of motion that, we have an explanation on why none of the,
you can supply that to the clerk, and that'll be by what time? 4:30 on Tuesday for the next council meeting.
Tomorrow at 4:30.
Oh.
If I may, Madam Chair, notice of motions are required by 4:30 p.m. the Tuesday prior to the council meeting. We don't have a council meeting next week, so it's the next Tuesday, it's a week tomorrow.
Okay, I'll prepare that. And I also want to bring up the fact that, I was just wondering if the clerk can explain, how he would secure the return ballots to prevent the irregularities that happened at the last election. And, I did suggest last week that the ballots could be picked up by 4 p.m., by a security company each day, and it would cost about $55 a day. It's time sensitive.
Okay, thank you, Counselor Kett. Clerk, Mr. Clerk, can you please address the election question, the ballot question? I will allow it.
All of the election procedures are found in the procedures and rules, which were provided to every candidate which nominated. They're also on our website, so all of the procedures and rules can be found within the procedures and rules document.
That's fine. I just wondered how the clerk was gonna secure the ballots if they're gonna be held on the premises, seeing that there's been a change in mail-out dates and everything like that.
Mr. Clerk, as far as the security of our ballots, this was already determined that the procedure for ballot securing?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. Yes, the ballots will be secured.
And how would they be secured differently than last election?
Counselor Kett, the clerk wasn't here last election, so the clerk has a detailed plan for this election, which would include the securing of the ballots in the vault.
Well, I have a great, a huge problem with our vault and the security of the ballots. And when they're brought here and opened, and they're left in a big room, it doesn't give me any comfort, knowing that there was huge
Counselor Kett,
irregularities last time.
I'm going to say that this is now an inappropriate conversation that we're having. I'm not speaking on behalf of the clerk, but I would assume that the integrity of the staff would not be put at risk during the election process. So if there's concerns about the handling of the ballots, then my suggestion would be that this is discussed with the clerk outside of the council chambers.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. All right. Now I'm going to move on to adjournment. Can I have it moved by Councillor Somerville, second by Councillor Watton? This meeting has been adjourned. Oh, all those in favor? Adjourned. Thank you.